because I've just never known.
Hello, we are going to go into our business session. Want to thank everyone for coming. Before we begin, we're going to read ourselves out of closed session.
I move that this council certify by a recorded vote that to the best of each council member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session.
Second.
Second, we're changing up our voting, but right now we're going to do a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please say no. Correct. Okay, so we're at our regular business session. Before we begin, we have an announcement about the ACRJ.
Yes, so tonight we were supposed to have a presentation from Colonel Coomer to talk about the bond financing for the ACRJ. In an open bid opening that was open to members of the public on Friday afternoon, the bids came in. There were I believe six contractors that bid. The lowest bid that was put forward exceeded the budget, and for that reason, that project is in the process of figuring out a path forward. That will happen, those conversations are happening, or will happen with the ACRJ board itself. I can't or won't predict what the next steps will look like with that project, but at this point, that's where that stands. And so tonight, that item has been removed from the list.
Yes, and several people are signed up to speak, and of course, you still can speak on that when we get to that in a few minutes, but we just want to let you know when that comes up again at some point, there will still be an opportunity to speak, and we'll hear your comments on that at that time again as well. So, that being said, we're going to have a moment of silence, please. Thank you all very much. Are there any announcements? I don't think I had any. Okay. So
One real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, second Sunday of the month, neighborhood walks. This month there'll be Locust Grove, and they'll be meeting at Burley Marant Elementary School on Sunday the 8th at 1 p.m. So check out the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee website for more details. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any proclamations? I didn't think so. Okay. We're now at the opportunity for community matters where we will hear from the public. There are 8 people that have already pre-registered, and the first person is Mr. Harold Foley, Jr.
Thank y'all so much for allowing me to speak tonight. First of all, I know that things was pulled, but as an organizer, we can't put things back in the tube. And so we are here today to talk about how the money should go into the community. Before I get started though, I want to thank everybody who came out, everybody who came to a protest with us, everybody who did everything that they supposed to be doing to make sure we GSD. If you don't know what GSD means, it's get stuff done or whatever.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do is pass my time to Kate so she can start it off.
Okay. Ms. Thomas has a package of material that you can look at. I think you already got it. So my name is Kate Fraley. I'm a resident of Charlottesville. Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Thank you for this opportunity. I was shocked when I heard that the number 13 was removed from the agenda, but I was more shocked by the fact that in the packet last Friday, you had the proposal for the funding, but you didn't have any of the pictures from the final design. So I'm going to talk about that a little. I was going to talk about it was going to cost more than you said before. First, I want to tell you about something they've already cut in order to stay within the budget. They're building a wall on Avon Street, on the Avon Street side, so people won't see barbed wire. And as a result, they're not going to replace the 2,000 building's roof. If they have to cut something, don't let it be the renovations. We will have to pay for it eventually if they do. The People's Coalition has always supported renovating the jail, have not supported the final design, the big, beautiful jail, and that's probably one of the reasons why they're over budget. The first page of the stuff that you have in front of you is a picture of how the jail looks right now. The second page is the preliminary design picture, which is quite modest. The third and fourth page are the front of the building, the big, beautiful jail. The next page is the existing Avon Street side where the magistrate's office is. And the next page is the big, beautiful jail side next to Avon. If you notice on these pictures, which you obviously haven't seen before except for Mr. Pixton, Vice Mayor, let's see.
Thank you.
There's
Thank you,
no
Kate.
bar-
It's time.
No, it didn't even turn on.
Yeah, it did.
Well,
It's
where?
been, yeah. It was on the screen, and went back. So, thank you. We have your information. The next speaker is Cherry Henley.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, Ron. We have been addressing issues on criminal reform on ways to improve the community that's impacted. You will hear from other members of the People Coalition, and now we're addressing a jail expansion fund and vote. I wanted to address other ways of supporting our people without caging them. You all have a copy of the report, I think, Imagine a Just Seville, hopefully. As you can see, all of those who worked on Imagine Just Charlotte Seville names are listed on the front page. This was after the DMC report that 52% of black men were charged unfairly. There are other statistics for black women. Some of these people are still suffering the after effects such as probation, fines, and fees, which eventually has led to homelessness. And for the city to consider what can be done differently, its only response is to build a place to bring more harm and devastation to families. After tireless work from the grassroots organization many years, speaking on the racial divide, the DMC was released. The study revealed what was happening in Charlottesville. Little was done after the study for the harm caused to black and brown citizens. So the mayor took another approach in 2020, where work on Imagine a Just Seville began. There were many recommendations in that study by this group for the city to rectify its mistakes. I want to iterate a few of those recommendations. Recreation activities for the youth. As we can see, the pain and trauma has trickled down to gun violence among our youth. Gun violence in the U.S. has increased due to complex interplay of factors, including the COVID-19 pandemic, gun sales, lack of social services, and the influence of drug markets. The pandemic also exacerbated existing social issues and mental health concerns, contributing to a rise in violence. Another recommendation was to hire advocates in the public defender's office. Because they are short-staffed and have low funding. There are many in our community who are working to support those coming home that could be placed in these positions. The central focus of our group was to invest in programs that increase social cohesion and well-being, while also working to prevent initial interaction with the criminal justice system. Many organizations are leading the way to support our community members. The Fountain Fund, Home to Hope, and other grassroots organizations such as myself, Lend in Hand, George Revere, Wartime Fitness, what he's doing with the youth. And lastly, I want to introduce you to a great young man who's changing the lives of many young people in the community, Mr. Raekwon Jones.
How y'all doing? I run a nonprofit called Brothers Blessings. This is my team, and we take the kids out of the community and we put them into sports. So as in with sports, it's like we As a sports,
Thank you. Thank you. So I would like to get more information about your program, and there may be other time, because all the slots are not filled up. So just if you wait a few minutes, yeah.
That was in time?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. The next speaker is Richard Allen. Is Richard Allen here? The next speaker is Elizabeth Stark.
Hi, councilors, and City Manager Sanders. My name's Elizabeth Stark. I am a city resident. I live in the Woolen Mills neighborhood. I'm here today to support the People's Coalition's call to halt the expansion of ACRJ. The project will cost the community tens of millions of dollars, and as you've acknowledged tonight, even more likely than we anticipated. But these funds should be used instead for restorative justice programs, rehabilitation programs, and reentry programs to support community members and reduce the dependence on the jail in the first place. The jail should be a last resort for community members, not a first response. I'm also here to ask that you reconsider your support of flock surveillance technology and other data aggregating technologies like Peregrine. At the February City Council meeting, several of you, a majority of you, signaled your support for Flock. I know some of you weren't here and others of you didn't go on the record about it, but there still was majority support for Flock. Now, after a spate of recent reports that have demonstrated that when these technologies are deployed, they will be used by bad actors in the state to surveil communities. This is the time for the city to protect its residents. Already, nationwide flock data has been used to track down a person seeking reproductive health care in Texas, and now the federal government is using flock for immigration-related searches, surveillance, and detentions. Once this data exists, and despite whatever restrictions our community asked to be put on the data, this reporting shows we can't put the genie back in the bottle. If the data exists, it will be exploited by both bad actors and the state. The federal government has shown that it's increasingly lacks respect for the rule of law. And so we cannot trust this sensitive community data to be in the hands of law enforcement and possible bad actors and the state. I think this is very, very clear. We need to turn off the flock cameras and reject technologies like Flock and Peregrine that hand our sensitive data over to anyone willing to exploit the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anna Malo. Anna Malo is the next speaker. I don't see anyone moving. Rosia Parker.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Rosia Parker. I would like to speak to you about the ACRJ expansion funding. Let's not be tricked by sunk costs. Charlottesville, Albemarle, Nelson have already spent $4.5 million on jail expansion plans. But that doesn't mean we should keep spending. Just because money has been spent doesn't make it wise to pour $49 million more before interest. That's money we could use for housing, jobs, mental health care, youth programs. There's still time to choose a better path. The final check has not been written. City Council could stop this. Now is the moment to ask, is expanding the jail the best use of public dollars when the jail population is at a historic low? Expansion by any other name is still expansion. Adding a bigger lobby, second floor mental health units adds over 16,000 square feet. That's expansion plain and simple. Even if they say rated capacity won't change, this creates space for more sales in the future. Adding a bigger lobby, second floor, mental health, sorry. Our community needs care, not cages. People struggling with mental health illness don't solitary confinement. They need services and support. Building a bigger jail doesn't fix the problem. It enforces a system that punishes people for being poor, sick, or in crisis. A vote for expansion is a vote against our future. Every dollar we put in the jails is a dollar we don't put in the schools, clinics, transit, or youth programs. Let's invest what keeps our communities whole, not what breaks them apart. We're not going anywhere. The People's Coalition and our community partners will continue to fight for justice. We're urging the council to vote no on jail expansion, and we will be back if you don't. I also want to speak with you about this fitness room, the staff fitness room. Let me get that to you. And then I also want to give you the pictures of the outdoor recreation. I want to speak to you about the outdoor recreation. How does it come from this to this? This is like a recreation outside of the cell. So there's no fresh air. There's nothing for the inmates / innocent before proven guilty. Don't be treated like inmates. But I feel this should be a better recreation compared to the staff recreation fitness room. That's beautified more than what the jail recreation would be for the inmates.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The next speaker is Alicia Linehan.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Alicia Lenahan. I live at 1420 Villa Verde Lane, 22902. Since the City Council meeting on May 5th, it has become apparent that Homeland Security, ICE, and other federal agencies are operating in our community. The courthouse action on April 22nd led to a FOIA request by Delegate Carlson and Senator Deeds. Although little light was shed on the courthouse, those documents provided some information about the level of cooperation between the Albemarle County Police Department and the federal government. Historically, the ACPD has collaborated with Homeland Security on significant cases, including homicide, rapes, and child exploitation investigations. Of immediate concern is the recent cooperation that targets our immigrant and refugee neighbors. On January 2025, ICE commenced an operational initiative to locate unaccompanied alien children. Also in January, members of the ACPD senior leadership team met with the regional Homeland Security agent and the ICE regional supervisor. In an email to the Board of Supervisors dated April 21st, 2025, Chief Reeves outlined the assistance being provided under the operational initiative. On at least one occasion, a detective accompanied HSI agents to a home. This occurred under the guise of a wellness check to protect children from human trafficking. The operational initiative clearly states that deportation is the goal for managing UAC cases, pursuing and locating and/or preparing and serving immigration documents, or when executing orders of removal for alien cases that are included in this initiative. At approximately 7 a.m. on May 23rd, FBI agents showed up at the homes of local public defenders representing the two individuals taken from the courthouse. Apparently, they were seeking information about the women who questioned ICE actions on April 22nd. On May 4th, there was an ICE encounter in a city neighborhood. On May 20th, ACPD and ICE agents conducted a joint training exercise on the grounds of Albemarle High School while classes were in session. Last week, DHS identified Charlottesville and Albemarle as sanctuary jurisdictions. Far from standing up for our values and principles, both local governments adamantly denied that they have any policies or practices that prohibit or impede cooperation with federal immigration laws or law enforcement officers. Terror does not stop at the county line. For those of you concerned about what might happen if Charlottesville stands up, please consider the real terror of our immigrant and refugee families that they are living with every single day. It is past time for the City Council and Charlottesville Police to be completely transparent. What agreements have you signed? What level of cooperation are you providing? A thorough, detailed presentation will tell us who and what we have to fear. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Beard. Gloria Beard, yes.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Gloria Beard, and I'm going to talk about people don't get well in the cage, jail or prison. They get worse. People with mental health conditions are overrepresented. Can y'all hear me? No. Okay, well, let me start over.
Testing.
Okay. People with mental health conditions are overrepresented in our nation's jail and prisons, with many individuals becoming justice involved due to a lack of adequate community mental health services. About 2 in 5 people currently incarcerated have a history of mental illness, a rate twice as high in the average county jail and prison, are mostly inadequate to meet the needs of a person with mental illness. Read the National Alliances on Mental Illness, NAMI. That's the definitions for this title. Also, National Association of Social Workers, Behavioral Health Disparities and the Specific Needs of Special Populations, NASW. I have a few questions to ask you. What is the protocol for the mental health rooms at Albemarle County Regional Jail? Also, is there going to be enough hired staff for special purpose cells? After being incarcerated with mental health issues, what happens when they are let go? When you release them, what about housing, the medications, the appointments, and safety? I heard of some communities that tried the expansion of their jails, but only to end up buyer's remorse. For instance, in Oklahoma County, 260 million jail project has now ballooned to 700 million. In Dane County, Wisconsin, a jail product is now 27.5 million, over budget. And in Lucas County, Ohio, a jail project is now 83 million, over budget. Especially at a time of federal funding and, the cuts, starting an expansion project could be risky business. I'm not saying don't renovate the jail, but don't spend that much money to add extra cells for mental illness because you just can't get well in a cage. I have worked with the mental illness, and that is a sad, sad business. And then in lockdown, it makes it worse. It's not going to work. So I want y'all to think about that. And Harold, did you give them?
Thank you.
Y'all read them. Please read without saying up there,
Yes.
please.
Thank you. That was all. That was all of the pre-registered speakers. So we have opportunity for, I believe, 10 more speakers. Anyone like to speak? That, Ms. Jackson.
I'm Jessica Jackson.
One second. Let me make sure if we can get the time in straight. Should we just use the?
I'm gonna go back
the
to
watch?
this board now.
Okay. Okay. Good.
I'm Jessica Jackson. I own property in Charlottesville. I went on the Albemarle Charlottesville jail website today and just gathered some information and understand that there's a need to renovate the jail so that those who are living there and the working standards are adequate. but it's also important to provide adequate mental health professionals for those who are incarcerated and for those who work at the jail. According to the Albemarle Charlottesville Regional Jail webpage, currently the jail has 3 medical professionals dedicated to mental health. It also states that there are 300 people incarcerated. It might not be 300, it may be less, but there are only 3 medical professionals dedicated to mental health. The jail does have assistance from community nursing students, but students tend to be able to only offer temporary assistance, and they have to be supervised, so they can't really provide care for people who are incarcerated. 3 people cannot be expected to provide all the mental help needed to rehabilitate individuals and help them transition back into the community as productive non-criminal citizens. I'm perplexed as to how anyone thinks that 3 professionals is sufficient. A humane and reasonable requirement by the City Council is to require that in addition to the jail renovations, that there are funds set aside to train, hire more mental health professionals, and pay for services at in-house mental care facilities. My ask tonight is that the City Council would take a pause, that you would make some renovations, but that you would make it a priority to insist that funds are also set aside yearly in the jail budget to hire more mental health professionals, pay for in-house stays at mental health facilities. The requirement of funds for increased mental health services for those in jail should start immediately or at the beginning of 2026. Charlottesville should also ask Albemarle and Nelson County to allocate money for more mental health care workers. If each county is willing to pay tens of millions to improve a building, surely each county should be willing to set aside at least $1 to $2 million each year to hire people or to send people to mental health facilities to help our citizens be rehabilitated and get the mental health care that they need. If the money is not set aside to provide more mental health services, then it may send a message that incarceration is the only goal, and I hope that's not the case.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. The gentleman, did y'all want to come?
Let the jail folks keep on going. I'll wait till 6:10.
Okay.
Hey, my name is Jaquan Jones. I'm a co-founder of Brothers Blessings. We're here to help kids who struggle in the school or at home or in life. If they don't have positive role models, we step up. And if they need a father figure, we're here. We guide, support, and care. We even take kids into our own homes. This is about love, respect, and hope. We're building a better future, one kid at a time.
My name is Joe Whalen, and also I just want to talk and say how much this motivates me, just helping the youth, because I was once that kid that really need that motivation, that extra push, because I believe in second chances for sure. And, life, it hits hard sometimes. And, just having that somebody that's in your corner that can relate and looks just like you, it means a lot, and it takes a long way.
My name is Hassan Niblins, and my why for helping Brothers Blessings is I was in middle school, my father got incarcerated, and I had a behavior specialist teacher that is still in my life, and I just want to encourage helping the community out.
I'm the founder of Brothers Lessons, and this is my team. And, we just wanted to come talk, let y'all know what we here for and what we do it for. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. I had not heard of your organization. I'm very impressed with what I hear. Ashley, if you already got, we here. Great. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you. Ron Ignatz, I live in the county. I echo the alarm raised earlier this evening. The physical presence of ICE and other federal law enforcement is terrifying for our immigrant and refugee neighbors. It is intended to intimidate you and everyone else in the community. The threat is amplified by the city's willingness to contribute to multiple layers of surveillance that come with data acquisition. I know the city plans to spend $150,000 to purchase a system called Peregrine to pull together information already held by the Charlottesville Police in different databases, thus making it more accessible and useful. Peregrine, a spin-off of Palantir, collects and connects data across disparate sources to reveal insights for government agencies. This product relies heavily on artificial intelligence, which finds connections that may or may not be relevant. Open source searches have expanded to include information no one should have access to: health data, financial records, and any other digital data that these vendors scrape up and add to their packages. Today, AI is a popular policing solution. This carries dire risks, including privacy violations, bias, false accusations, and sabotage of our civil liberties. At a minimum, the adoption of such tools requires community control of whether to acquire them, and if adopted, transparency and clear guardrails. The Fourth Amendment's overarching goal is to prevent overreaching by police surveillance. Data acquisition systems that include Flock and ubiquitous ALPRs, the cameras at intersections, are developing the capability to build out a consolidated database of people's movements and locations. All an officer or other government employee would need to do is type in a search, provide a generic reason, and hit enter. The administration awarded Palantir Technologies $30 million to build a new deportation surveillance platform named Immigration OS. It will use the sensitive personal data that DOJ has siphoned from federal agencies such as the IRS, HHS, and Social Security. Immigration OS is being built for ICE ERO, the division responsible for raids, detentions, and deportations. Palantir must develop or provide a prototype by September. ICE is using surveillance technology as part of its mass deportation efforts. That laser-like focus can easily be turned on any one of us. Your oath of office requires you to support the Constitution of the United States. Your constituents demand it. We too are watching.
Thank you. Rob?
I'm Robin Hoffman. I live on Caroline Avenue. And last week we had a police officer come to every one of our doors, I think it was like 14 houses, and ask, how did this sign slow traffic or something like that be on our street? And everybody said, I don't know. It's really old. It's been there forever. Well, I do know. And so here's the thing. We on Caroline Avenue have had 4 shootings, I think, into the homes. We've had flooding, which the residents who were in their homes for like 35 or 50 years told me about. So we're fighting together to petition against floodplain building and all that kind of stuff. Our cohesiveness has drawn us together so that we can talk with each other about what's going on in our street. And we also wrote petitions to the neighborhood at City Hall. We did all the processes we're supposed to do. And then all of a sudden, we learned that Kevin Cox was arrested. And we're like, what? He was our children's safety guard, school, to get them, when the buses wouldn't run, when there was traffic on East High that was during rush hour, and he was like really lurching in the traffic again, for his life, and he still did it. And he talked to Mayor Snook at the time, and everybody, and they came there and they publicized whatever. He did the process of trying to get people to make a crossing walk there. It took us over 3 years to get any kind of signage, any kind of crossing walk on Caroline Avenue. There's a blind person who couldn't cross the street. I'm just saying, could you please prioritize your arrests, your resources, and ask people like Little High how they as an association were able to get a huge flower where they were having issues with crossing and stuff like that. I think Kevin Cox used the chalk paint, he thought it was going to be erased. You ask him what he's done. He planted flowers on East High to stop the traffic. You know, he's done so much for our neighborhood. But that's just an example of overreaching, I think, and also underreaching. Please listen to your neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Dee Dee?
Thank you. Good evening. Dee Dee Smith. I live in the Fry Spring neighborhood. And I'm here to raise the alarm about another big, very expensive project that you all voted on in June of 2022 is slated to be funded and start construction funded next month and start construction. And it doesn't look anything like what you voted on. And it is slated to go through a 5-mile 30-inch pipeline in our city streets through our most vulnerable neighborhoods, down Cherry Avenue, past 1st Street, 6th Street, Kindlewood, and it was ridiculous to begin with, but it's gotten way, way worse, and you all have not had any presentation, the neighborhoods have not had any presentation on the changes that have happened to the central water line. And if I can illustrate here, this is the size of the pipe, the diameter of the pipe that is going to go in our city streets. In a street that has our pipes that are 6 inches in diameter, 8 inches in diameter, and the really big ones 12 inches in diameter, and they're going to put a 30-inch diameter pipeline. They thought it right alongside our own pipes. Well, you know what? That can't happen. They've now decided, no, they can't do that. They have to put this 30-inch pipeline 7 feet below our sanitary sewer line. So they have to dig a trench this wide, it's got to be wider than the pump, and then the pipe, 10 feet down, that's like here into our city streets. And to boot, they found rock. So over 4 of the 5 miles, they are going to encounter rock. How are they going to get through the rock? Well, they don't really know yet, but they're going to have to bore it because they can't blast it. And there is, I mean, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then, and here is the crazy picture of it. Now, one of the worst things is that now they've decided that they're going to do this in 2 phases, which means what they're going to vote on is to fund and start constructing phase 1. Here's which is the pipeline to nowhere. You construct that, you guys, they've got you by the balls, because phase 2, which has now been rerouted through more small city neighborhoods, and has to go through city land that they haven't even talked to you about yet. Land that you recently bought that you might want to build on, you might want to whatever, but once they start building that, they have to build this first. What are you going to do? You'll have a $60 million pipeline that goes nowhere. I am asking you to have a full presentation, not only to yourselves, but to the neighborhoods before they vote.
Thank you. Who else?
Thank you. My name is Reverend Karen Mann. I'm the pastor of Sojourners United Church of Christ here in Charlottesville. The Justice and Advocacy Ministry of my congregation signed on to the People's Coalition letter asking you to say no to funding the expansion of the jail. I also spoke last month about my concerns regarding ICE's operations within our community and asked for clarity about what agreements the city has with ICE. 3 minutes isn't enough time to address both issues, but I don't believe they are unrelated, nor are they unrelated to the issues around the flock or peregrine system. What's at stake in all of these issues is whether or not you, our city leaders, and our government are truly doing all that you can to protect and safeguard all the residents of our community, especially those who are most at risk. As the People's Coalition letter states, Black people have been unjustly and disproportionately incarcerated at a higher rate than white people in our community and spend significantly more time in detention. And this is because systemic racism and injustice are sewn into the fabric of our incarceration system, and expanding the jail will only exacerbate those inequalities. Meanwhile, as a previous speaker noted, there's mounting evidence that systems like Flock and Peregrine and other data surveillance systems are being used by ICE in its deportation efforts, while they encourage racial profiling of both Black and brown residents of our community. When DHS's list of sanctuary jurisdictions was released last week, I was disheartened to read the city manager's response that Charlottesville will, quote, comply with federal law and, quote, not obstruct federal immigration enforcement. Normally, I would be in favor of following the law, but when laws and practices are unjust, we have a moral obligation to resist them. And right now, our federal government is unjust, and it is engaging in cruel and unjust immigration actions across our country through its mass deportations. DHS and ICE are trampling on due process, they're attacking hardworking families, and they're creating a culture of fear and intimidation. Rather than trying to get itself removed from that list of sanctuary jurisdictions, which I understand has now been taken down, Charlottesville should claim that as a badge of honor. We know the dangers of white supremacy and racial injustice in our community. We have looked hate in the face, and we need to stand together and say no. No to expanding our jail and incarcerating more of our Black neighbors. No to allowing ICE to kidnap our immigrant neighbors. No to any surveillance system that aids in racially profiling our neighbors. And yes to investing in real solutions for this community and real justice for all of our neighbors, regardless of their race or immigration status.
Thank you. Sir. Come on. Oh, you come on up now.
Councilors, my name's Bill Emery. I live at 1604 East Market in the Willow Mills neighborhood. And I apologize to the jail folk for breaking in, because I totally believe in what you're trying to do. But on a different matter, this coming Wednesday night at Old Lane High School, the county office building, the Board of Supervisors will vote on a special use permit to fill an 1.5 acres of floodplain that's in the county across Franklin Street from the mobile home park that has like 62 families of working people that's in the city. Franklin Street's the city-county boundary, and it's actually city property. When governments, industry can be smartly located, and Mr. Sanders can tell you that, it's important to have a industry and a business base to help pay taxes so you're not getting it all from homeowners. In this case, there's no need to fill in the floodplain. The developer that's seeking the approval for the floodplain fill, he owns a non-floodplain lot 200 feet away. And like 5 years ago, he got an approved site plan from the county to construct 160,000 square feet of, warehouses and stuff, 11 buildings. 5 years later, he's got one of the buildings under roof, but it's not completed. So what I would encourage you guys to do is communicate with the Board of Supervisors. I'm going to leave these down by the parking tickets. This is a petition that you can very easily fill in if you don't want to write or speak at the county meeting. And that's really pretty much it. I mean, it's just, we've all sinned. We've all could plan better. The city and the county, why in the world our planning commissions can't get together and talk about these boundary areas instead of doing one thing on one side of the boundary. And if you're in a trailer, I used to have an 8x32. It doesn't protect you from the noise of tractor trailers, from lights at night, from the beep beep. There are no sidewalks, and that was a big problem on Franklin Street. A lot of pedestrians, no sidewalks. Filling the floodplain is like crushing baby birds. It's not something that good people do. And when you have, 16 or 11 sites that have been approved for buildings, go ahead and let the guy build those things first. And then if they want to consider filling in the floodplain, then come back to it. Don't pre-approve it now and destroy the environment.
Thank you, Bill. We have opportunity for a couple more speakers. Anyone? Sorry. Yes.
Piggyback on Bill here.
Yeah.
My name is Jenny Mikulski. I live at 718 Franklin Street. I have the vainglorious distinction of living at the lowest elevation in the entire city of Charlottesville. My house was built in 1920. The Carlton neighborhood has its own history. I know that Belmont and Woolen Mills get all the attention, but Carlton's own vernacular history is actually pretty interesting. It was subdivided in 1891, so it is one of the more historic neighborhoods in Charlottesville. I bought my house 6 years ago, and ever since I bought it, I've heard three things over and over and over again. The sound of the equipment of this developer grinding rubble across the street for me to build the roads on his business park, and the cry of Albemarle County that they don't have enough light industrial space in the county because of all of the conservation easements on the large estates. And three, that the county and the city won't do anything to collaborate with each other or cooperate with each other. So I can't believe the last one is true, but it's all I've heard, and I think it's time to maybe think about a partnership there sooner rather than later. As Bill said, that development isn't even close to being complete. Albemarle County's finished that Broadway Economic Development Plan. Franklin Street's literally the boundary. These projects can only be accessed on your streets. Do you have a seat at this table? Do you have an opinion about what gets developed that can only be accessed by trucks on your streets through city neighborhoods? And with 1.5 minutes left to go, and because I also feel really bad, I feel compelled to share that 3 years ago I lost my sister to suicide. She had been a city resident since 1999. She was a beloved artist and a resident of McGuffey. She suffered from very serious mental illness. When she was not unfamiliar with 5 East, was there many times, never great experiences for her there. But when there weren't beds at McGuffey, she was sent to the jail many times during the pandemic. And there was one notable morning where she was released in the morning in winter with barely any clothing and still in the throes of a psychotic episode. So I hear you. My heart's with you. It is a tragic thing when someone is having an already incredibly distressing experience that is outside of their control, is put in jail for lack of bed space. And if that is the only recourse in those situations, then we have to have people in those spaces with the training and the sensitivity to know what those people need in those horrible circumstances. So, didn't expect to speak about that tonight, but thank you.
Thank you. We have opportunity for a couple more speakers in you.
Hi. Siva Flynn. I work with the Community Climate Collaborative in Charlottesville. I am speaking tonight. Partly I just want to express my gratitude for everyone who came out to speak about the opposition to the jail expansion. There's a lot to pay attention to there, and we're going to be listening and paying attention. So thank you for speaking on that. I'm speaking tonight to express something that is kind of somewhat related. The gas rate increases that are on the agenda for tonight's meeting. I have thoughts and concerns about the proposed rate increase for Charlottesville gas customers. The proposed rate increase of, in some cases, over 26% reflects the volatility of natural gas prices. It proves the need for a viable plan to reduce energy costs for residents and also meet our climate goals. In 2020, C3, my organisation C3, completed an energy burden study of Charlottesville, showing that 22% of Charlottesville households were living with a high energy burden. Over 10% of their annual income is spent on energy, compared to the overall average in Charlottesville of 2.2%. We're currently completing the same type of study for the county that shows a similar picture for its residents, many of whom are also Charlottesville Gas customers. For the households impacted by high energy burden, disproportionately composed of low-income and Black residents, utilities are not a minor monthly expense. They are a source of constant financial stress. While it's great to see the income eligibility and outreach for free weatherization with LEAP has been expanded by the city, much more work is needed to address the burden on the city's lowest income households, particularly renters who face additional barriers in accessing home weatherization programs. Over the past few years, the city has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for a consultant to conduct a decarbonization study that has ultimately illuminated no path away from gas reliance for the city-owned utility, forcing residents to continue using gas. The consultant also projected massive rate increases through 2050. We need to see that ratepayers' money is being used to invest in local solutions for energy resilience and affordability, rather than continuing with gas and purchase carbon credits which are currently acquired from British Petroleum. In the absence of an energy transition plan that aligns the future of Charlottesville Gas with the city's climate commitments, all we're getting are rate increases without investments that reduce fossil fuel dependence for Charlottesville Gas customers. It's the worst of both worlds. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone, one more speaker? I haven't been over this area. Anyone, we have an opportunity for one more speaker? Did you have your? Yeah.
I prepared something.
Yeah.
I don't have it written down fully, so.
Well, you have 3 minutes. You can come up. You can speak off the cuff.
All right. Just need to
Yes.
think about it. Because I was emailing last week about the idea of doing a progressive property tax. And I wanted to discuss the reasons I wanted to have that included in the legislative packet. Specifically that I have been thinking about the ways to bring down the cost of housing and the cost of rent, and the reasons why it would be so high in Charlottesville and why it's increased so much. And I'm somewhat unconvinced that it is entirely a matter of supply and demand of housing, that just encouraging building some more housing might bring down the cost by maybe 5% over the next few years, but even that would just bring the cost down to where it was a year ago when it was already a crisis. And it makes me think that the only way to really resolve the housing crisis and to bring it back to a level where it was affordable, as it's increased, like adjusted for inflation, I think it was a 50% increase in the past 10 years and double in the past 30. To bring it back to that level, the thing that would need to happen is to both have housing be built and create a system where corporate landlords can't just buy up housing and keep people as perpetual renters. The idea that I have for having a progressive property tax would be to create a system where developers and landlords, after they've built houses, are incentivized to sell, and potentially, if needed, would be forced to sell in order to bring the cost down such that younger people like myself are actually able to eventually buy a house and are not stuck in a cycle where maybe a third or half of many people's income is spent on rent. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Great job. So that was the last opportunity. At this point, there'll be another opportunity at the end for public input. Madam Clerk, will you please read the consent agenda?
Consent agenda number 2, minutes from the May 5th regular meeting. Number 3, a resolution to appropriate $7,285.76 from the Virginia Department of Social Services to use for overtime for Medicaid unwinding, second reading. 4, resolution to appropriate $419,279 in additional funding received from the Virginia Department of Social Services to support staffing and operations, second reading. 5, resolution to appropriate $15,000 from the National League of Cities Southern Cities Economic Initiative Program to use for project planning, second reading. 6, resolution to appropriate $266,387 in FY24 Meadow Creek Golf Course surplus funds one of two readings. 7, a resolution to allocate $125,350 to the Local Energy Alliance Program, or LEAP, from the 2025 City Climate Program Support Grant, and authorize the city manager to sign a memorandum of understanding.
Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I move for adoption of the consent agenda.
And just quickly, just wanted for the community, wanted to highlight the clarifying for the Meadow Creek Golf, that's surplus from Meadow Creek Golf's operations itself, not the city. I just gotten one email about a concern about that. And then a small thing, but just again highlight the investment for the Climate Protection Program and Energy Resource Hub, just being a small thing to actually promote electrification and weatherization. And just wanted to highlight as a small positive climate action that the city has taken.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly second. Any additional comments? All in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed, please say no. Thank you very much. We're now at the opportunity for the city manager's report.
Good evening, councilors and members of the public. The first part of my report is actually a presentation from John Sells, Executive Director for Charlottesville Redevelopment Housing Authority, and then I will have additional comments after his presentation.
Good evening. So tonight we're going to be talking about the city housing portfolio, which is jointly owned by CRHA in the city. So the portfolio is commonly referred to as the NOAA portfolio, which is naturally occurring affordable housing. This portfolio started after a couple properties went on the open market where the rents for the 2-bedroom units were about $500. And so we looked to ensure that those units stayed affordable to the individuals that were living in those units. And so that began this NOAA portfolio. All right, so the next few pages are just the addresses for some of the properties. So the first property we acquired was 1016 and 1020 Coleman Street. It's 4 2-bedroom, 1-bath units. The next property was Montrose, 818 Montrose, which is 2 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom units. We then acquired the Dogwood portfolio, which was 74 scattered site units. The next couple pages identify those addresses and the number of units attached to them. And the last property we acquired was 100 Harris Road. It's a single-family home where the tenant had lived there for a couple decades. And so we wanted to make sure that tenant continued to live at that property affordably. Okay, who we are serving. So we're currently serving, of the families that we're serving, 68% of them fall under the 30% AMI and lower. 20% fall between 31% and 50% AMI, and 11% fall between 51 to 80% AMI. 29% of the units have a rental subsidy, and 70% of them do not. Of the 70% that do not have rental subsidy, 75% of those households actually qualify for a form of subsidy. Operational changes. So last year, we decided that after going out for contracts for pest control, we decided to bring that in-house because we needed a monthly treatment instead of a quarterly treatment that was under contract. The pricing for that was triple the price. We could not afford it. We actually hired 2 pest control technicians and then hired a resident that we then trained and now is a licensed pest control technician as well. We also completed 2 roof replacements on Ridge Street for a total of 9 affordable units. This actually isn't the right part. This isn't the right presentation, so I'm going to skip a couple of slides. Just this one. And so financials, which we're required to come back and report each year on, we recorded about $1 million in rental income from tenants and from the different subsidy programs. Total revenue brought in for this development was $1.18 million. We have 1 property manager and 1 maintenance technician. They also have an on-call In here, we get a management fee, which is 10% of the rent collected, not rent charged. And so, of course, there are some tenant account receivables that we're currently processing that are also in here, but we don't collect management fees on those. Something in here that I wanted to point out, we have a really big, where is it? Okay, there it is. All right, so under contracted building repairs, you'll see it's $153,000 for the year. 130,000 of that is for the roofs on Ridge Street. They're metal roofs, historic homes. They were about $80,000 a piece, or about $70,000 a piece to complete. So the total operating expense for the portfolio was almost 1.09 million for a net operating income of $100,000. Here I mentioned the non-reoccurring expenses, the roof replacement of $135,000 and consulting fees for appraisals at $4,400. Upcoming projects. So we did the 2 roofs on Ridge Street, but we also have been working with a nonprofit to analyze the roofs at other properties inside of the portfolio to look at free solar that would benefit the residents living inside of the units that pay utilities. And so we're actually looking at this on all CRJ properties, but a lot of those are happening in redevelopment. This one we were looking to do before, but we're also now looking at analyzing it when completing the 4% tax bond. And so the next bullet point on here is we've gotten a lot of questions like, what's going to happen with Dogwood? And so we are currently working to analyze submitting a 4% tax credit bond deal, which would allow us to pay the city back the $5 million initial investment in the portfolio, and also to complete substantial renovation on all of the units within the portfolio. The current timeline, or the previous timeline, was winter of 2027. We're actually going to look to push that to winter of 2026, based upon where our current projects are falling with our other mass public housing redevelopment. And I think that was the last slide. Did you guys have any questions for me?
Lloyd, I'll start with you.
I don't.
Yeah, no questions from me. Thank you for the update. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Michael?
I guess a few. One, I think the acquisition of older rental housing stock is a very important strategy. Philadelphia's housing authority has recently been making national headlines. They have a goal of acquiring 20,000 units, and they found it's more cost-effective than building ground up for, preserving and expanding affordable housing opportunities. So I think it's really exciting that the housing authority has been doing this kind of activity. You touched on a little bit. Could you talk about how that acquisition can put the housing authority in a stronger financial position long-term, and just exactly how that works?
Okay, yes, and I will say several of the large housing authorities have been buying NOAA units for decades, like Chicago has a lot. And so, yes, it's something that all housing authorities have started to do. The housing authority where I came from actually owned just as many market rate units as public housing units, because that's how housing authorities stay sustainable. Public housing does not pay well, and so it's hard to actually operate public housing with the funds that are just given by the federal government. And so allowing us to purchase the NOAA portfolio not only helps the community, it helps the housing authority. So the housing authorities can now collecting a management fee, which helps us hire staff to run the agency. We're also able to cover additional maintenance staff or additional property managers, and that's also able for us to provide additional services to the community. And so all of the non-public housing properties that we purchase do substantially well compared to public housing. On our budget, I think every non-public housing site produce really good revenue in reserves, while the public housing, I think like AMP4, which is the scatter sites, Mickey, Madison, Riverside, had actually a loss of like $40,000. The only way it makes up is because we do a $250,000 transfer of capital funds every year to cover the operational deficit that we have in that portfolio. So redevelopment has to happen for public housing and for the housing authority to continue providing the services that the community needs.
But those low-income housing tax credit properties that are paired with vouchers are producing income.
Yes, like South First Street is producing so well, we're able to add full-time security service, 2 people working, I think 10 hours a day, every day of the week. And so before they weren't able to do that, they were only able to cover 20 minutes of an hour is how much South First Street could afford of security. And so we had a security company doing rover service at 3 different sites. That's the only way public housing could afford it. Now Crescent Halls has its own security, South First Street has its own security, and once West Haven and other sites are done, they will be able to have the same service.
And I think, at least in the presentation we've gotten in our packet, I think an important point is 70% of who you serve is 0 to 30% area median income. 90% are 50% area median income and below. And I just wanted to highlight that because even a lot of low-income housing tax credit properties aren't meeting 0 to 30% AMI. And that 50% and below obviously is something the market is necessary, but the market's not going to build units renting for $400 a month because those projects have to be debt financed. They need investors. No investor is going to invest in a project that loses them a substantial amount of money each month. Yeah. So wanted to highlight the importance of just that element of it. The final question as it relates to the Dogwood portfolio is you mentioned kind of planning for a low-income housing tax credit application. Obviously, those units are old. You mentioned some of the repairs you know need to happen. I imagine there's a lot more extensively that needs to happen long-term. Are you envisioning that LIHTC application would be for renovating that portfolio? Would it be for redeveloping sites throughout that portfolio to add additional units? Kind of what would be I know it's a long way away, but.
So some of these sites look different, and so I would say Dogwood is going to be a LIHTC deal, which is going to be a renovation. I think we're estimating $45,000 to $55,000 per unit. So really substantial renovations going on in the units. Some of the other sites like Coleman may be a candidate for something different. That's also not inside of the portfolio, and not inside of the Dogwood portfolio as an original loan. It's just part of the city housing portfolio. And so Dogwood specifically, we will plan on submitting a 4% tax credit bond deal for that property. Mm-hmm. The other sites are like 100 Harris Road eventually will be a home ownership opportunity again. The only reason we haven't done that yet is because the individual living in the home has been there for multiple decades, and she deserves to stay where she is. And so we're not going to touch that until it's time to sell and become a home ownership opportunity. Mm-hmm. But Coleman is going to be something else, and we'll present that when we get there. We're probably a little ways away.
Yeah, and then, so one other question in our packet, there was one of the discussion points was the one individual property you're planning to sell on the open market. If you could just talk about why that is, what that revenue could be used for.
Yeah, so you got the packet that I wanted you guys to skip. So that slide I want you to skip because we are going to push up on the 4%. So if we push the 4%, we'll keep it all together as one. And so I actually sent a second presentation. We had a meeting last week. And so you weren't supposed to get no new ideas. And so that was not supposed to come to you. I sent a new one this morning that was supposed to come out, which we did not play. And so that is no longer in play. We're going to focus on the 4% deal.
But I will point out that there is a joint meeting of the CRHA board and council that we are working to schedule, so we should have things firmed up by then because we're looking at all the ways that we're partnering together right now.
That's it for me. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into more discussion then. Obviously, it's a very substantial investment for the city and CRHA, and I think it has been and will be a positive thing, but there's always a lot more to discuss about it, especially because, as you highlighted, we know there's going to be a lot of renovations and a LIHTC application at some point that are needed.
Yes, and I will just add, you mentioned earlier the cost difference between new construction and purchasing. The Dogwood portfolio, they've roughed out about $150,000 a unit. New construction is over $400,000 a unit. So there's a substantial difference between the two.
Right. And that cost being driven by, you need subsidy because it's still debt financed.
Yes.
And you're losing money. So it's not that the construction itself costs that much per unit. It's the debt financing to get the affordability.
It's a debt
that low.
financing over 20-something years finance.
Right.
Yes.
I just have a quick question. You mentioned 75% of the 70 who don't use subsidies could qualify for subsidies.
Yes.
Can you explain kind of the procedural or other barriers that might kind of prevent them from
Well,
getting
the
those subsidies?
biggest barrier is just the amount of subsidy available. It's just not enough. So we have our wait list is over, I think, 1,700. Vouchers, 1,700? Yeah, vouchers over 1,700 families. We have over 3,000 families on the one-bedroom public housing wait list for a total number of families on the public housing wait list of over 5. So it's just not enough subsidy to go around for the need.
Okay, thank you.
All right, a couple of additional items. From some conversations with counselors, there's been a desire that I speak on a few city positions on some matters that have been a part of the public discussion. And while I remind everyone I am not a politician, I do politic, unfortunately, because the job requires it. But I am speaking from the perspective of the role of a city manager and what it takes to do this job. But I do want to point out a few things that we need to make sure that we keep in mind. I'm not speaking about any specific individual, but when we have infrastructure placed in the public right-of-way without permission, that is a violation. That is not something that we can accept. It does interfere with public safety in more ways than one, and while advocacy is important for us to always continue to do and to respect opportunities for individuals to advocate, we have to keep in mind that something that is not actually a sanctioned activity could also pose a threat. And when it does pose a threat, I do have a responsibility, and others within this organization have the same responsibility to make sure that the public remains safe at all times. So it would be best if we would make sure that our free speech does not run afoul of the law, so that the two shall not cross. That is really the message in regards to that. And also, I do not direct the chief of police to arrest people. That is not what I do. I also point out that the flock system is a controversial matter. It is an item that was brought forward to council. We requested that it be a pilot opportunity. It was approved as a pilot. It is scheduled to expire in October unless a different decision is made at that time. The goal is to allow the system to benefit this community, and it is working. We have solved multiple crimes in this community as a result of the flock system. If that system did not exist, some of those crimes could still be unsolved today. I am not here to advocate for any company or any system. There's more than one that does it. We could easily go with someone else, and that is part of the reason why we consider this to be a pilot to begin with. There is additional work that we will continue to do, and we will make sure that we bring back to council the best recommendation that we can make and ensure that they make the most informed decision when it comes to whether or not we continue with this particular consultant, or if we go with someone else, or if we cease to use license plate readers altogether. The matter of sanctuary city. No one knows what a sanctuary city is because people have debated about that for a long time all over this country. The designation that was issued in regards to Charlottesville being a part of a list, we now know that the list is not online anymore. Don't know what that means, but I can assure you it's coming back. I would imagine that it will, and we will probably still be on that list. It is our responsibility to make sure that we do what we can to stay within the law, that we don't draw the ire of those who want to punish those who choose to not follow the law, because if we make decisions such as that, we will injure other members of our community when funding is stripped and things that we're trying to do for the betterment of this community are not available to us. So there's a fine line that has to be walked as it relates to managing these situations. I carry the burden of having the responsibility in many instances for making certain decisions. I will do my best. I will continue to do my best. I want to love doing this job so that you can have me here for a long time, because I do hear people say, please stay, don't leave. while others are now asking me to leave because of decisions that I've made. I will continue to do what I think is best for this larger community at all times. And then lastly, I have not spoken about the Federal Executive Institute situation since all that happened. I'll just start with, I am deeply disappointed in the actions of the federal government in pulling that property back from us. I spoke about it being a generational opportunity for this city, and it was. But thankfully, in the work that we did, in the short period of time that we had to consider this opportunity, we actually found some alternatives that we think might actually still give us an opportunity to do a real chance to make a significant impact for schools. Council will be meeting with the school board. We're working to schedule that meeting in August right now to have it precede their council retreat. But there are a few decisions that we can make right now and still benefit on the timing that and the opportunity to consider FEI that will allow us to make a few changes to what we had originally planned and get some of those benefits, and still remain disappointed that our federal government did what it did at the last minute. We were informed of a process by the General Services Administration and the Department of Education that was presented to myself and Chris Engel, our Director of Economic Development. We believed that that was the process that would be followed. We followed that process, completing every step along the way. When the city itself was determined to be ineligible to apply, I immediately called the school superintendent and said, are you interested in being the lead on this? Let's figure this out. And we did that. In submitting the proposal, we were selected. We believe on merit, and then it was taken, and we don't believe on merit. So in that situation, we have to accept the results, because at this moment, I had to move on because it's time for us to make some decisions about the Walker site as it relates to making this pre-K facility come to a community that's been waiting for a very long time for this facility to be available to them. So we're doing that. We have tried to have conversations with the federal government. As you might expect, they're not taking our calls right now. So for that reason, I have not been able to figure anything out, figure out any other options. And in all honesty, I have actually been more focused on trying to figure out our Plan B action so that we can get this pre-K center established as soon as possible and take advantage of some of the other choices that I think we can make that will ensure that what we were dreaming of out of getting the FEI property, most of it is still possible. So, again, I'm not a politician, so I will get off my soapbox and end with that as my statement for this meeting.
Thank you. The next item we have on the agenda are the action items, and the first action is a public hearing, an ordinance regarding an easement to Dominion Energy for undergrounding of electrical equipment at Penn Park and Quarry Road. Chris Jensick will, I thought I saw Chris, but.
So this is the item we're removing from the agenda?
This item we are actually requesting be pulled from the agenda.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing and resolution to allocate $12 million of capital improvement program contingency funds. And Chrissy.
Actually, I'm going to, Ms.
Oh.
Hamill will help me out, and one I can't see, so you might want to come to the microphone for me. But this is a request to spend some of the surplus funds that have accumulated from multiple years, including FY24 was a little over $22 million. I spoke to you all in the last meeting. I made a presentation labeled Community Interventions. It was a series of recommendations that were aimed at public safety, quality of life, and urgent infrastructure. You had a presentation earlier this evening about urgent infrastructure projects, a total of $500,000. We've talked about downtown mall improvements. We've talked about homeless outreach services that we would like to also engage in. That totaled $5.4 million. So that $5.4 million is what I shared with you at that time. I would be adding to, and I would be adding items that were a part of what we normally do in a transition from one fiscal year to the next. In most instances, we will always find ourselves coming to you at the end of the fiscal year asking to use surplus funds to help shore up the closing of this current year and or the stabilizing or prepping for the next fiscal year. So Ms. Hamill's going to read off, because I can't, the additional items that were added to go along with the $5.4 million that I outlined for you in the presentation at your last meeting.
So just to clarify, do you want to read what was on the original list or the ones you're keeping?
Just the ones that we're keeping, and then I'll explain why it's not the same.
Okay. So we are adding a few things that we are considering our budgetary guidelines or policy compliance issues. Some of these you've seen in years past as well. One is for the Healthcare Fund Reserve Replenishment Fund. That is at $3.5 million. You may recall that over the last few years, we have had a surplus in the healthcare fund, and as a consequence, we have not changed premiums for city employees. We did make a few plan changes. However, we have continued to see skyrocketing claims costs that have left our healthcare fund at a balance that is well below our reserve. And so we are asking to use $3.5 million to replenish that reserve. And I'll just note that while that's not a great thing, it is not unusual. A lot of localities are seeing this phenomenon with healthcare costs. In addition, for the retirement fund, if you'll recall, last year we used some of the surplus to pay out to the pension fund for the class and comp and also the 3 collective bargaining contracts that were approved for the last year's budget. In addition, we have approved the Teamsters contract this year, so that is an unfunded liability of $1.1 million in the pension fund that we're asking that you replace. Human Services had a loss in their fund, mostly for city services or city things that we added without additional revenue. And so we are asking for the $60,000 to bring that fund back out of the red. And then finally, we're asking for $175,000 to replace budget that has been used for contracted legal services throughout the year.
So the original packet for anyone, and I want just to clarify that for counselors and the public, the original packet that was published identified $12 million in expenditures that I have reduced. One, as a result of the designation that we just heard about from the federal government and concern for what that might mean in the way of stripping federal funds, which is what I've continued to talk about for months now as a matter of something that I think we need to always remain conscious of and be prepared for. So what I did was go back into what I had originally prepared as a $12 million ask, pull out things that I believe that we can wait on, not meaning that we won't necessarily do them, but I don't feel that the urgency is there for me to make the decision to bring to you a request to spend that money right now. And I also tried to take into consideration where there might be moments that staff may need time to actually begin spending the money anyway, so we can work to prepare for the expenditure without actually needing to allocate the funds in case something were to change in the posture and we end up losing federal dollars that we are relying on at this time. We will continue to have a bank of funds available for us to backfill those for any period that we may need to.
So this is the document that we were handed?
That's the replacement document to point out for you the original resolution and then with an edit to it. So it's now 8.69. Am I reading that right? Okay,
Yes,
I forgot my glasses. 8.69 million is the ask instead of 12.3 million.
And the things below the yellow line there are the things that we took out that added up to the $12 million.
Correct. There will be, of course, multiple moments for me to be able to come back to you to continue to spend that money as we've talked about it. You all have priorities. I have staff who are constantly asking me to spend more money because we have these funds set aside. I don't have a date in mind as to when I would come back and ask for the balance of what makes up this $12 million. But again, the point that I'm making is that I don't know that we have to act on those things right this minute, and I'm just buying time for us to clear up some things.
Yeah. A process question. You know, my understanding is normally an item where there's a expenditure above a certain amount, there's 2 readings. Certainly this would be far above that. As I read the agenda, this looks like it's supposed to pass tonight on one reading. Is that the case? Particularly with the change being different than what's in the packet, I'm just concerned from a public transparency level. I mean, even if nothing changes, I think the public deserves as much opportunity as possible to weigh in on, significant expenditures and give us feedback.
I think that's probably more of a legal question. I think one reason why it got to be a one reading was because these funds were previously appropriated to the contingency fund, and now we're just reallocating them, but there's no objection if you want to have 2 readings. I don't know why it was assigned one unless that was it.
Yeah, and it may not be legally necessary. I just know it's been the internal policy for a while. Again, and maybe we won't get feedback that changes it, but I'm a strong believer in what we do is for not just ourselves and staff, but the public and providing them an opportunity to weigh in, so.
Fair enough.
Does it impact you in terms of?
Does not.
And tonight is a public hearing.
Yeah. So we're still in discussing it on council before I open up the public hearing, so, so do you have any more questions, Mike, or?
Question-wise, I guess, so I think you explained it, but the city attorney legal fees, that's for the legal services and when we didn't have a city attorney.
Correct.
The contracted out services. The Parks and Recreation infrastructure, downtown mall improvements, I guess I'm still not sure exactly what those downtown mall improvements are.
So that's what we're working to identify specifically what those items will be. The Downtown Mall Action Plan is the document that the committee that served for a year produced. So the action items will come directly from that report. It'll be from that series of recommendations. The question that we have posed to staff is, what can we get done for that amount of money within the timeline that we are allocating? The goal is to ensure that any projects on the downtown mall will be concluded before June of next year, as we will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the downtown mall during the 4th of July weekend, and we would not like to have an ongoing project in the middle of that for people to pose as a hazard. So the goal will be that we will come back to council. The intention is to go back to council with a work plan on what it is that we plan to do specifically for the downtown mall because of funds being allocated, in addition to what's already available.
And similarly, just to clarify, the Meadow Creek Trail, that's not any additions or changes to that project. That's basically
Those are
additional
costs.
money to complete.
Cost
what was already
overruns and
presented.
budgeting, just the time it's taken to get the project done, it's escalated. We've had a few changes, of course, in what we have to do in order to maintain 2 crossings in that area, but those are just cost increases for a delayed project.
And it had gotten pulled a couple of months ago.
Previously, yeah.
To accommodate something else.
Well, and I'll say that, just again, for the benefit of the public appreciating, $500,000 had been previously allocated out of ARP. Those were federal funds that we received in response to COVID. We had a deadline that we had to meet. That deadline was not going to work along with the Meadow Creek timeline, so that $500,000 was pulled and reallocated for other distribution. That then made the project short $500,000. What we have now done is made up that $500,000 plus added $250,000 because as it's gone out for bid in that time period, it was more expensive.
Those are all the questions I have.
Natalie, you have any
Yeah, I
questions?
have a couple. This might have been something that Ben Chambers said earlier, but I don't remember. In here, we've got 34 projects for quick builds, but the fullest is 67. The remaining funding, is that TBD?
The remaining, so the additional, what would that be, 33 projects are coming out of Safe Routes to School and other existing funding sources.
Okay, so we don't need to.
The 34 is what's coming from the
The
surplus.
34 are just the ones that don't have funding already from whatever
Correct.
source.
Yeah.
Got it, okay, thank you. And then, for the items removed, I know we still had some questions amongst ourselves about, especially the temporary shelter situation, so I was glad to see that put in a TBD line item. But for the Meridian barriers, everyone seemed pretty jazzed about those, other than the fact that they were expensive. Is that being moved to TBD for?
It was just because I made the call to reduce the amount to spend right now, not
Okay.
saying that we wouldn't come back to it. It was just based on being a little
Just an
cautious.
easier thing to TBD.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
I think we have enough information in regards to the cost. There's probably a few more questions that we can interact with the vendors on before we have to do anything. If I found that there was anything that would be worthy of coming back on its own, I'll do that as well.
Okay, and I know that technically I think we could do this tonight, but I actually agree with Michael here that delaying a vote for one more meeting for a sum this large, you know, I'm usually a let's get it done
That's fair.
vote, but I think for something this big, it's worthy of just some additional public notice.
Okay, Brian, do you have any questions?
I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you put into all of this and your flexibility and nimbleness to adjust as you think appropriate. I'm a little disappointed that the mall lighting improvements aren't making the list.
And it's, that I will tell you is just a matter of timing.
Okay.
That's all, it's a timing.
The mall manager, I guess, is that something you're still
We have found
fleshing
another
out?
way to pay for that, actually.
Okay. Gets better all the time.
I'm
The
hoping
mer-
I might be able to do that on some other things that are on the pending list too.
I second Natalie's point about the meridian barriers. I think those are, particularly if what just happened in Boulder, Colorado, I think we're going to be, it is a lot of money, but I think, you know, God forbid something were to happen, we'd be really upset with ourselves, and rightfully so. And then the healthcare fund reserve, do we have a sense of, like, over the last 5 years, how often we have to top this up? I mean, that's a big number.
So this is the first time in a while. We were actually, our industry standards or best practices would tell you that based on recommendations we've received is about 30% is a good reserve. At one point, we were like at 60%. That was largely during COVID because people weren't going to the doctor, they weren't having tests done. And now we are in very close times of becoming zero, to be quite honest with you. We are still evaluating claims. Unfortunately, they are small numbers, but very high catastrophic type claims that are driving the cost. It's not the sniffles or the clinic visits. It's the more catastrophic cancers and those types of things that are driving cost. And again, many localities are seeing very similar results. And so we will be spending some time in the next budget looking at different plan changes or different things that we can do to try to help offset this. But this is the first time, I'm trying to remember the sheet, but I don't know how long for sure, but I can tell you that at least within the last 8 years, we haven't added any money.
So if we were to say, hey, what about 2.5 as opposed to 3.5, you would say that just won't cover the need or the expected need.
You know, it's a shot in the dark because it depends on the claims and as they come.
And if we don't spend it, we don't spend it.
And if we don't spend it, it stays in the healthcare fund, and certainly that becomes part of the funding for the next year's budget. So it's pay now or pay later. And so if we don't need it, that's less money we'll have to ask of the general fund in the 27, from the general fund or employees in the 27 budget.
Okay, thank you.
And I would point out that if we also were to make the decision that we did not top it off with the $3.5 million, that this would be the first time that we were in the red at the close of a fiscal year. So that
Which
too
is in
concerning.
violation of our, one of our policies.
Fair enough.
Can I ask a quick follow-up to what you just said? You said a lot of localities are seeing a similar trend. I'm just curious on how that data is gathered. I know there's various conferences and groups that we're a part of, but how do we know what other localities are experiencing?
I'm going to say that some of that is anecdotal based on how they were handling that through their budget process. And then some of it is information that we receive from our consultants who help us manage the healthcare. I don't know those exact sources, but we could get you some more information for sure.
Yeah, I'm just curious if there was like a bulletin that goes out for all finance departments or something like that.
Yeah, not that I'm
really
aware of,
Yeah. Okay.
It has been a general theme throughout budgets for this year.
Yeah, just surveying other people's budgets. Okay, cool, thank you.
And I also just want to allay any concern about the choice to not do meridian barriers right now. For the Tom Tom Festival, we did engage that same company. We rented them and deployed them for our own testing capabilities. If we have anything else that comes up, we would pursue that option as well, because there's still some other features that we did not get to test that I think we would try to test. So again, I did consider that in making the decision to do this now or a little bit later. I'm just happy that we're actually at this point, because 2017 happened and we should have probably had something like that at that time, and at least we're this much closer to getting it done.
Thank you.
Lloyd?
So what is the line item for $1.5 million for city environmental and mobility policy plans that we're not currently going to be funding?
So I was hoping you would let us bring you that information later when we need to spend that money, but Mr. Freeze can give us an update as to what he thinks that will go towards.
Sure. So, Council, first, during Mr. Chambers' presentation, he mentioned the transportation plan as a plan that brings together what are now disparate plans around bike infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, transit, and also looks at our policies in this space and how consistent they are with kind of the current direction we're going in. So that transportation plan, transportation strategy he references the same thing as the mobility plan talked about in there. And then similarly, the environmental plan is also looking at kind of the disparate range of planning processes we're engaged in around environmental issues, and trying to bring that together into a more holistic natural resource planning process.
Okay.
And I'm sure that'll be something at our next meeting, right? At the June 16th meeting, our NDS director, Ms. Brown, will be speaking to those aspects of the NDS work plan.
Okay. Another reason for choosing to have it wait, so that she would have the opportunity to give you that information as well.
Didn't mean to
No, you're
force
fine.
somebody to steal the
You're
funding.
fine, no.
Okay.
She'll have more details, I assure you. She's excited about this.
So I'm stepping in temporarily for the mayor. Are there any other clarifying questions the other councilors have?
One more
Oh, wow.
clarifying point, just to highlight. As you know, this last year's surplus was just under $23 million. In addition, we added $2.7 million from the school gain sharing. So even with these allocations, you'll be left with about $22 million in the CIP contingency, which we will be left to address federal needs if possible, or federal omissions if possible, and then any other things that council would like to use the contingency for.
Thank you.
So, any other clarifying questions? I got one myself because I just went on the city's insurance fund. I want to make sure if I should recuse myself. But I'm good. So, I'm good, and to vote in, I'm good. Anyway.
You're just good.
You're just good.
So I will now open up the public hearing. Anyone from the public like to speak on this matter? Yeah.
I found interesting what the city manager Sanders said about the flock system, having it, like there
So, I mean, this is just on the matter.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
Yeah, so there will be another opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting, but this is just on the surplus. Yeah, thank you. If there's no one else, I will close the public hearing, and this will be on the, I don't, do we want this on the consent agenda, for it?
I would just have it as an agenda item.
Okay, and on the meeting on the 16th.
And I'll.
That's fine.
Oh,
Sure.
I said this last time, but I'll just say it again. The 1.2 million for the clean team, I'm not against that as a program, but I do still question whether it passed a cost-benefit analysis of jumping ahead over even other investments related to homelessness. So that's the only item that I have a concern about. Not that it's a bad program, I just really question whether it would pass a cost-benefit analysis of being the first investment we need to do.
Is part of the strategy there, because we're calling it a 2-year pilot, we're not
Yeah, that is 2 years' expenses.
Right, so we're not, permanently adding it to our line items is because next year is such a big year?
I'll say that is part of it. That's not my motivation, as I've been trying to work towards addressing issues in different ways than we have in the past, and hopefully we get a different result. That what I wanted to do was just to interrupt what we have as the experience on the mall, making it a better experience regardless of what it is that is detracting from that today. But one thing that I feel like is missing, and I know that my Parks and Rec team will admit that they can only do so much. We've only funded them to do so much, and we leave the bulk of the day untouched because they can't do it. So there's a gap and there's a need for it. So whether I did it with this external firm who does this or expand Parks and Rec services in order to do it, it's still going to come at a cost. And our initial assessment suggests that they would be about the same, maybe more in some instances based on what we would try to do. But again, what I believe that we should do at this moment is by having this amount of an excess fund, try something, give ourselves a little bit of time to see how it works, and then we can make tweaks along the way and/or different decisions at the end.
And theoretically, at the end of the pilot program, if there's things we like that they do, we could incorporate that in-house and.
Potentially so. I mean, they're only going to be able, of course, to engage in a contract here locally for a certain amount of money because they're working in different places and they're drawing on resources from different places. We've explored all of that in our conversations with them. This is a minimum version of the program that we've identified. There is a Cadillac version that comes even more expensive than this. Again, I felt like it was important for us to interrupt what is happening by trying something. That's really why we're where we are.
Are the people on the ground who would be hired and facilitate the clean part of this, are they local or?
We would still be trying to figure that out, but I believe so. It all depends on what it is that we end up engaging them in doing, because they may have to bring different people instead.
Okay, because the opportunity cost that comes with that is also something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As we've said before.
And we've had situations where contracting out city services has worked or been necessary, but we've had a lot of opportunities where the product we got was not very good. And I think there's a lot of rent seeking in that world of organizations that are trying to go to local governments to offer service. And so I do also kind of wonder about that here as well. But anyway.
That's fair.
Okay, so that will be on the agenda on the 16th. The next item is the ordinance to amend and reordain City Code Chapter 31, the utilities, to establish a new utility rate and service fees for gas, water, sanitary, sewer, and this is the first of two readings.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Councilors. I'm Lauren Hildebrand. I'm the city's Director of Utilities. Mr. Cullinan and I are going to go over the annual utility rate report. A little bit about utilities by the number. In water and wastewater, we serve 14,800 customers, of which 94% are residential. We maintain 179 miles of water lines, 168 miles of wastewater pipelines. In the stormwater area, we bill 15,300 customers, of which 83% are residential, and we maintain 136 miles of stormwater conveyance piping. In natural gas, we serve 21,600 customers, of which 56% are in the city, 44% are in the county, and we maintain 340 miles of gas main lines. Now, if you look at these numbers, specifically for water, wastewater, and natural gas, these are taken at a point in time where we download that from our database. So at any, and they fluctuate based on the season. So at any point in time, like at when UVA, goes back home for the summer and there aren't as many renters in those spaces, that those numbers can decrease, but they do fluctuate over time. And I thought I'd point that out. I want to talk a little bit about reliability and water quality. In the past, we have touched on some other communities around the country, like Flint, Michigan, and Jackson, Mississippi. But we've seen certain water service disruptions in our neighboring Virginia communities in recent months, like the city of Richmond, Greene County, Louisa County. And, we're certainly sympathetic to whatever their situations are. We'd like, and it's what people in my profession, it's what keeps us up at night, frankly. And, but we'd like to think that Charlottesville is different. While we can't guarantee these things can't happen in our community, but we'd like to think with the planning we've done over the last 15 years, long-range planning, investments in our infrastructure, and what we're continuing to do in our community, that should preclude these kind of disruptions that happen here. And because we always strive to make sure that we give reliable utility services. In our last customer satisfaction survey, when people were asked in April of 2025 what they thought about reliability of their water service, 99% responded that they were satisfied or neutral. And I think that's based on our, as I mentioned, our proactive approach where where we address aging infrastructure. I'd like to highlight just a couple of projects that we're going to be focused on in the next year. Our community is going to be focused on Locust Avenue Phase 1, which is a waterline project that, and I'm sorry, I think I'm pressing something. I don't know what I'm pressing, and it's going blank on me. Locust Avenue is Phase 1, and that is a project that's actually, we're anticipating starting either late June, early July, and it's High Street to Route 250 Bridge. Since 2011, we've seen 10 reported water main breaks, and this is a pipe that was installed probably in the 1920s, and so it's seen its end of its useful life, and it needs to be replaced. And so we are replacing 2,900 feet of 6-inch with 8-inch ductile iron pipe. Along those same lines, we're also working on the design of a new water line in West Main Street. This will be done in conjunction with the natural gas cast iron replacement project that we're planning to start in the spring of next year, late spring, and this is where we'll be installing a 12-inch ductile iron pipe, and we anticipate it'll increase reliability in the West Main corridor. We also are working with our partners at Ravenna Water and Sewer Authority and Albemarle County Service Authority to build a resilient water supply system. Recently, Ravenna has opened bids on the Central Waterline project for the first phase. This project, over the entire 2 phases that they anticipate, includes 5 miles of 24-inch and 30-inch water line that basically connects the Observatory Water Treatment Plant to High Street, to their transmission line in High Street and 250 bypass, and it has other interconnections of their system along the way. It will improve the hydraulic connectivity, it'll add redundancy to our system, and also improve efficiency of the urban water system. I'd also like to touch on our safe drinking water, or water quality. In our last survey, what people thought about safety of their drinking water, 93% were satisfied or neutral when they answered that question just this year. We do an annual consumer confidence report, and this is taking thousands of testing that Ravenna assists us with of our water treatment as well as our distribution system. And this report, we're notifying people right now, is out for them to observe online. We coordinate with the Virginia Department of Health on this report, and it indicates that the quality of our drinking water meets and exceeds all regulatory requirements and expectations for safety and reliability. In addition, last year we were required by EPA to do a lead service line inventory. That report was completed and submitted to the Virginia Department of Health in October of last year, and I can gladly say that we have no evidence of lead existing in our public or private water distribution system. I also want to touch on updating you on some of our new energy efficiency initiatives. You know, we have a really successful energy saving tree program that we've been conducting since spring of 2022. It's only been in the spring, but people love this program when we give away trees, and we're promoting safe digging practices, and strategic tree planting helps households conserve energy. We've planted 1,000 trees. Our households have planted 1,000 trees since we started this giveaway program, but we also see additional benefits. You know, and recently the Tree Commission's report, it increases the city's tree canopy, and of these trees, 65% of our trees are included in their report, and 65% of the total tree planting activities on private property. And another benefit I want to mention is it reduces stormwater runoff. We've updated our rebate program. We've added a new rebate for $125. People can get reimbursed for a smart thermostat. We've also expanded $100 for our programmable thermostat rebate program. We've increased and expanded our attic insulation rebate from $300 to $500. And we have a new program, $150 rebate for attic air sealing, which is this, when people sometimes do attic insulation improvements, they'll go back and they'll seal cracks and gaps in their attic to get a full benefit, and that's what this rebate is for. In addition, utility staff, we realized since 2020 that since we've been doing these attic installation rebates, there's been pretty low participation. And we believe it's due to the belief that people think their attic installation is okay. In our gas mitigation survey that we conducted in the last few years, residents believe their homes have adequate attic insulation, 68%. But yet, when you look at the Energy Star report, 90% of the homes in the United States are under-insulated. So there could be a disconnect here, and we kind of want people to check out their attic insulation. So there was an idea that we would develop an application, and utility staff stepped up to the challenge and developed this self-assessment tool where people can walk their way through this tool, and it's available to all city residents. They go up in their attic, they measure their attic insulation, and they can work their way through this tool to determine if they have adequate insulation or not. And we hope that people will take advantage of it. We're partnering with the local Energy Alliance program on this deal, where if people need assistance and they can't get to their attic, then they can ask LEAP to do an assessment for them. Or they can also, and there's really no there's no pressure on this. People have as an option, they can also consult with LEAP based on their assessment that they did on what the cost would be to enhance their attic insulation. Of course, they can also call a contractor, but they can also consult with LEAP. And I just want to reemphasize that, we've increased our rebate value for insulation and added on this attic air sealing rebate, and so the total is $650 value. And so that complemented with the current 30% federal tax credit can go a long way for people to improve their attic insulation, and that's what we're going after. We've launched a comprehensive outreach campaign to promote this program. Last week we started TV ads. We're incorporating Flicker the Flame in our TV ads to try to get people incentivized to take advantage of our program. We're also targeting streaming spots, and later on we'll do direct mailing through postcards to try to promote our attic insulation rebate. I also want to touch on our free home weatherization program. In the last survey, we found 45% of the people are not really familiar with our free home weatherization program. This program is free, and I believe there's a misconception in our community that there's not adequate funding, but there is funding. We just need to get people incentivized and change their behavior to take action, to look and see whether they qualify based on the income qualification limitations, and contact us, and we can work them through this free home weatherization program that's available for income qualified folks. We have found, working with outreach a long time in utilities, we in 2007, we're taking a similar pathway here that we did when people didn't recognize the smell of natural gas. It's associated with our gas safety regulatory compliance. And that was back in 2007. Now everybody recognizes the smell of gas because of the way we promoted that public outreach. And so we're taking a similar path here by having TV commercials that have been developed to pique the awareness of people and try to get them interested in this program and motivated enough to take action to participate in this program as well as the attic installation program. Of course, you know, it's a little different than what we did before, but we're going to give it a shot and see if we can be successful. And with that, I turn it over to Mr. Cullinan, who's going to give you the financial overview.
Before we do that, can I just say two things quickly? One, we had someone earlier talk about homeowners and renters, and I just wanted to point out that the weatherization program you just mentioned is available to renters.
Yes, it is.
They just need a written permission from the landlord, so if that's something that a renter wants to pursue, and considering 60% of Charlottesville is renters, this is available to you. But I do want to also note that these are only available to people who heat their homes with natural gas.
That's correct.
So that's also
correct.
something to consider. If you were interested in this, but you don't have natural gas, then you wouldn't qualify. So just kind of like a heads up to folks. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Chris Cullinan, the city's Director of Finance. And so, Lauren's had the opportunity to share with you, all the efforts that she and her staff and our partners at Ravenna and now Albemarle County Service Authority have been taking to plan, maintain, operate safe, reliable utility infrastructure and services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And as you touched on, we have had some recent examples of what happened when that doesn't go well here in our own backyard with some of our neighboring jurisdictions. And suffice to say, there is a worth and a value to having these services. The fact that for the most part, people can utilize these services without really thinking about, is it safe, is it reliable, will it be there? These things happen, and that's good. Given all the things that we do have to think about in our day-to-day lives. But that being said, it doesn't happen without sufficient financial resources. And as we've seen, and as you've seen in your recent budget discussions, costs have gone up. They continue to go up, and in some cases, quite a bit more than we've seen in the past. But again, as we go through this, we'll dig into the numbers a little bit, but I'll also offer some of the empirical data we have that our customers do see the value in the dollars that they are spending for their city utility services. And so what you see on this chart is our average customer, our average residential customer, comparing what they're currently paying for these 4 utilities and what that monthly bill will look like starting July 1st based on the proposed changes to the volumetric rates and the monthly service charges. And so the bottom line, it's a little bit under $13 a month, $12.84 for all 4 utilities, and you can see the relative contribution of each of those changes to that bottom line. And again, I'll go through each of these in a little more detail for each one. But again, we are asking folks to pay more for their utility service. That's the bottom line. But again, I do think, and we have the data to back it up, that they do see the value and the worth of having those safe, reliable city utility services. And so starting with water, the revenue requirements or the budget for water for next year is a little $20.7 million. That's about a $2 million increase over the revenue requirements for this year. Of that $2 million, Ravenna Water and Sewer Authority makes up about $1.4 million of that. For their expanded, primarily for their expanded infrastructure and debt service for their projects that they're doing. And so as you look at that little pie chart there, you see that they make up the largest chunk of the water budget. Last year, that number was about 54%, so it's creeped up a little bit. The other pieces are relatively stable in terms of the city's, the cost to operate the city's water division and customer service billing. And then over on the left there, this is what I mentioned before. These are questions that are part of the customer satisfaction survey that we do. And again, 96% rated excellent, good, or fair value for what folks pay for their water service.
And just to clarify, so the 56% of the cost of water service and 56% of what would be driving rate increases, that purchase of drinking water from RWSA, that does capture the cost of RWSA's infrastructure and capital projects.
Correct. It's a combination of their operations and their infrastructure and any related debt service with that infrastructure. And it's the way to think about this is of every dollar you spend on your water, 56 cents of that is attributable to Rivanna. In terms of the increase, as I mentioned before, this is about a $2 million increase over a year ago, but Rivanna makes up about 1.4 million of that. So that's why that piece of that pie has gotten a little bit, the pie itself has gotten bigger and that wedge has gotten bigger as well in terms of the portion of it attributable to Rivanna.
Yeah, I would just be curious, just for public information, to know which, slice of the 56% is capital projects versus other things at RWSA.
I think it's about 50-50. And, utilities, utility finances are a little bit different than general government in that they are much more infrastructure intensive than general government is. And so that metric of 50-50 is not terribly uncommon. You see that in a lot of utilities. In my past utility experience, that's about where we were operating. So
Michael, if you go to our last Rivanna meeting, which was last week, and download the packet, I think it's more like 55% to debt service.
That portion of their budget has gone up.
Yeah.
And I think it's either been 50-50 or maybe just past the 50% mark in recent years.
Do you remember, Sam?
I don't. But yeah, I thought it was close.
Somewhere between 50 and 55. We'll get to the number. Yeah, we do have that. Going over to wastewater, something of a similar story. The revenue requirements for next year are just a little over $19 million. That's about a $1.4 million increase over the current year, and of that $1.4 million increase, about $1.1 million is attributable to our share of Rivanna operating and debt service costs related to wastewater. And again, you see that piece of the pie. The Rivanna piece is the largest one. Last year, that was about 58%, so it's 60% this year. Again, the pie's gotten bigger, and that piece of it has gotten bigger at the same time. And then again, on the left side, you see the same question as you saw before, rate the value that you pay for your wastewater service, and we see a similar number to the water. For stormwater, on the financial side of it, there are no changes being proposed to either the budget or to the rates. They're going to remain the same as they were this year since actually the inception of the stormwater utility. One thing I do want to note is the number here, rate the value that you pay for your stormwater service, is definitely lower than the other utilities. And that's an item that Lauren and her team have flagged. It's their belief. It's a messaging. It's more outreach is needed to explain exactly what they do and how they do it and why and so forth. And that's an item that's on her team's work plan. Okay. And then finally, natural gas. Total gas budget for next year is projected to be $35.4 million. That's about a $7.1 million increase over the current year. And the biggest driver of that is the cost to purchase natural gas. Price of gas has gone up fairly significantly over the last year, specifically in the last 6 or 7 months. Again, you see that little wedge there says 43% a year ago. That was about 32%. But again, similar sort of result in terms of the value for gas service. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a slide or two, because the gas rates are a little different. The way we financially operate the gas fund is different than water, wastewater, and stormwater. But I'll touch on that in a moment. And so when you look at your utility bill, there are two pieces of your bill. There's the volumetric piece of it, based on how much you use, how much of the utility you consume, and then a monthly service charge. And so for the volumetric piece, based on how much you use, these are the proposed increases over the fees that were adopted a year ago. Two things to note. One is, you see there on the right, we are updating the city's water and wastewater assistance programs. When that program was put in place in 2012, there was a maximum of $150 of assistance available for customers per year for water and $150 for wastewater. Obviously, over the last 13, 14 years, utility rates have gone up, and so to sort of keep that number in line with how much they've gone up by, we're increasing that to $250 a month for each utilities for a total value of $500. So again, that's going from $300 to $500 to help our customers with their water and wastewater bills, and again, to reflect the changes in utility rates over that time period. And that's something that going forward we'll review on a much more regular basis to just ensure that we're still meeting the intent of that program and the value of it. Quick note on the natural gas. You see here it says 4.3%. The legal ad that was published showed rates of about 25, 26%, and so here's the difference. So for the legal ad, if we were comparing the rates that were adopted July 1st, 2024 to what we're proposing for July 1st, 2025, it's about a 25 or 26% rate increase. But what you see here reflects that over the course of a year, every month, we're actually adjusting the gas rate using the purchase gas adjustment because natural gas is a commodity. It's traded on a daily basis. The price fluctuates, and we operate all of our utilities on a break-even basis. And so as the price of natural gas changes, either up or down, whichever way it goes, we make that a corresponding adjustment in the gas rate so that we're not overcharging our customers, we're not undercharging them as well. And so that increase that you actually, if you were to do a point in time between July 1, 2025 and July 1 of 2024, it is that 25, 26%. But what you see here is what we've tried to depict is based on your current budget, your current utility bill, which we use April as the most recent, just because when we calculate the rate or calculate the rates for the purposes of the report, compared to July 1st, it's only 4.3% because that gas rate has been increasing over the course of the year. It gets adjusted every month, and so it's a little complicated. Like I said, it's the way we do natural gas is very different than water or wastewater, which is where we set the rate at July 1st and we don't touch it for the rest of the year. It's it's designed to recoup that revenue over the course of the calendar year. But again, because natural gas fluctuates, and as you saw before, it's the single largest expenditure of the gas utility. We do make that adjustment every month, and so. We try to be transparent. Like I said, it's a little complicated. We try to be transparent and try to explain exactly how those numbers tie together. The legal ad has certain requirements, but we also try to depict, based on what you're paying now versus what you can expect to pay July 1st. But again, we do adjust the gas rate on a monthly basis, up or down, depending on whatever price we paid for it.
So
I'm sorry?
year over year, it was a 25% increase, but for April alone, it was only 4.3%.
Compared April to July, April 2025 to July 2025, we're projecting a 4.3% increase. But that rate has actually been going up since between July 1 and July 1, 2024 and April 2025, that rate has been increasing. Like I said, and especially starting in about November, we saw those prices start to creep up.
Okay.
And then as I mentioned there, so that's the part of your bill that is based on how much you use. And based on the proposed changes to the monthly service charge and to the volumetric rates, customers will still have the vast majority of control over their bill based on how much they use. It's roughly 79% of their bill is based on what they use, so they still have a lot of control within their power to affect their checkbook in terms of their usage. But there is a monthly service charge, and the idea behind this is just simply that there are certain costs associated with having an account, utility billing, meter reading, or debt service that are just fixed regardless of how much you use. And so we have a monthly service charge for water, wastewater, and natural gas. We're proposing a change to the water and wastewater monthly service charge. And what you see up here, these are the combined numbers. So it's currently $7.50 a month for water, $7.50 a month for wastewater. The proposal is to take each of those to $10 to, again, reflect the rising fixed costs that we have with operating the utility. On that chart that you see there, roughly 94% of our customers fall in that very first group who have a 5/8 inch water meter. And so they would see a change of about $5 per month. We aren't proposing any changes to the natural gas monthly service charge. So for the majority of our customers, it's going to be 10, 10, and 10. 10 for water, 10 for natural gas, 10 for wastewater. But then as you see here, as you go up in meter size, there's a proportionate difference between those. A 5/8 inch meter is roughly, or I should say a 1 inch meter is roughly double that of a 5/8 inch meter in terms of the amount of water that can flow through it. And so these proportionate impacts are captured up here. And just so that I get the question all the time, who has the 14-inch meter? That's UVA. They're the only one in the system. They're the biggest one, and so that's what their monthly service charge will look like. But obviously, their monthly water bill is fairly substantial, so it's somewhat relative to that. And that concludes our presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Ms. Hildebrand's available as well. Thank you.
So we've been asking questions, during the presentation, but are there others now, additional questions before I open up the public hearing?
Yeah, several comments, but questions-wise, just for now, questions. So I look back at 2022, and the equivalent rates and charges for average customers was $29 for water, $50 for natural gas. Today, that's $44.80 for water, $66 for natural gas. So obviously, looking back several years, there's been a substantial increase, over 50% just for water. The assistance program, you've increased, kind of roughly in line with those increases, but for those who don't qualify, it's still a pretty significant increase that, is impacting housing costs. You touched about how RWSA's capital programs are a significant part of the cost of water. And they obviously have a number of very expensive projects coming forward. Are those yet reflected into the rates? Or are those going to be reflected in the rates once those projects begin? Because I guess the debt service, the debt would not have been issued yet.
Correct. So we base, for Rivanna, they give us every year an annual operations charge and debt service charge, and it's based on the debt that they've already issued or are about ready to. And so similar to how we do it, we issue our bonds on a cash needed basis. They do it the similar way, but they do have a CIP program that spells out what their plans are. And so, but we base the rates on what they've actually issued, and so it's based on their actual debt service costs. In the rate report, in the detailed sections of that, we do a rate projection for water and sewer, and that includes both what we know from Rivanna as well as our own operations. So we do try to the best of our ability, project those things ahead, and they do show those rates continue to increase over time.
Yeah, just for the public, because I think it's important for the public to know. I mean, what's kind of the scale of those increases?
I will have to look. I honestly don't have that on the tip of my brain right now, but they are, in the range of 5 to 10%. But they're in there. I can direct you to which exhibits those are. But again, in the interest of transparency, and these services are essential, but they are expensive. And the only, because our utilities are operating on a self-sustaining basis, the only place we have to go for that revenue is to our customers.
No, and I hear that. I just think, it's still important to understand. Yeah. I mean, since 2022, water alone has gone up over 50%. So it sounds like the trajectory would be projected for that time to continue over that same, 3 to 4 year time frame.
I'll find those exhibits and make sure that you get them.
Like I said, comments, but question-wise, there's only the only question I have right now.
Natalie? Lloyd, do you have any?
No.
I will now open up the public hearing for this, and would anyone like to speak?
Man, that was magical thinking. Michael, thank you for bringing up the obvious about the tie between utilities and housing and being able to just afford. There's $500 million in the next CIP, RWSA. The rates, and I'm surprised you guys didn't chime in. They are skyrocketing. I've never seen anything like it, and I've been following RWSA for at least 20 years. And so it's bad. It's really, really bad. And the average daily demand for the urban area has not gone up at all in 25 years, despite population increases. And that's just water technology catching up. And it's worse for the city because we're old. We have old infrastructure. And so it's longer, and high rental. So it's longer for the city to improve its water efficiency. But what I really want to get to, and we try to bring this up every year, is the pilot for gas. It's a payment in lieu of taxes. This drives me crazy. Mr. Cullen and I, when I was on council, would fight about this every year. And it's the same language. The utilities do not operate on a for-profit basis. Yes, they do. You all charge I think it's around 25% tax on gas. Not necessarily on all the parts of the gas. It generates $6 million that is taken from the enterprise fund and put into your general fund. If that's not profit, I don't know what you call it. And the explanation was always, well, if it was a for-profit company, they would make profit. Well, yeah, that's right. It's a public company, and that's why it is. It's profit. And to say that utility rates are calculated annually to bring the enterprise fund to a break even, except for the $6 million that you charge on bills, on your gas bills, and it might be water too, but most of it comes from gas, that you then put into your general fund to use any way you want to. And which is a real problem for the C3 folks, because it makes the incentive to decarbonate real hard if you're going to lose that $6 million in your revenue. You know, in the 1860s, Virginia had the same problem with secession. The economics just didn't work out real well. So I would encourage you to ask the questions about pilot. And let's remember, utilities are really regressive because they hurt the people who have the most. They have the least energy efficient homes, they have the least water efficient homes. And as we all improve our stuff, and we do, and those rebates are mostly for homeowners, that means that most of the costs are going to go on the low income rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want? Well, yeah, for the ordinance, utility rates. No. Okay.
I made my longer remarks earlier, obviously, on this gas rate increase. I just want to point out that it is extremely, extremely confusing and unclear to advertise in the agenda that it's a 4.2% increase in your actual bill, when we're then told that it is, the 26, 27 odd percent over the year. So we just need a lot more clarity in what we're communicating and what we are hearing, so that we understand what the actual impact is on people's annual planning for their, for their income, for their spending. It's news to me that everyone's bills increase slowly, month by month. That's something that needs to be communicated more clearly, if I understood that correctly. The actual increase in people's bottom line is what they really are considering and caring about. So please, some more clarity on that.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on the utility? If not, I will close the public hearing. And are there other comments? This is the first of 2 readings, so it'll be on the agenda on June 16th.
Well, just a couple comments. I mean, one, I do think it's important for the public, whether the perspectives of the infrastructure is needed, not needed, whatever. I do think it's important for the public to fully understand the rate at which their cost is going to go up over the next 5 to 10 years. Granted, I don't know what the historical trend line is on percentage increases year over year, looking back like 20 or 30 years, but these, are pretty astronomical and do have an impact on actual housing costs. If you're talking about 50% increase over, a 3 or 4 year period, and that continuing forward. a little, not directly related to utility rates, but I do think they are still related because, it's about the service people are getting for it. I do agree at some point it would be worthwhile having a presentation on the central water line. Again, not saying whether the project is necessary, unnecessary, good, bad, but just the cost increase itself and the impact it'll have on infrastructure, I think does warrant city council public information. And then I would also say, I think the comments we've heard tonight and some through email are accurate in terms of the natural gas utility in this report. Not shocking, but it's expanded by about 500 customers, I believe. So if our goal is decarbonizing the natural gas utility, I think it just is true that the study we had done was, a waste of time and money that didn't change things that couldn't have happened otherwise. And certainly we're not seeing decarbonization. And I do think we still need to move towards any carbon credits being done locally as opposed to the international credits, which I don't think are providing a significantly larger impact. And I think, if we've abandoned the goal of trying to transition the natural gas utility to incentivizing electrification, we should communicate that to the public, but certainly, in the information we've seen tonight, there's not any move towards that vision.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, maybe Ms. Hildebrand is the right person. One of the emails that we received was talking about the fact that the cost of a gas connection, although we raised it recently, is still nowhere near, for example, the cost of a water connection. And the gist of the email message was, well, why the heck don't you raise further the cost of the gas connection so as to de-incentivize, if I can use that neologism, the new gas connection?
So what's built in, and Mr. Cullinan could certainly weigh in on this, but what is different is in water, wastewater, we have a facility fee, which basically, when people set a meter, and it's quite a bit of money, we are trying to recoup the capacity of the system that we've already invested. And you don't have that same situation when you're setting natural gas rates.
Why not?
We don't have, where we're putting in additional water treatment, additional transmission lines, additional capacity in the water system. It's just a different kind of way people look at we don't look at natural gas utilities. If you look at how they set their rates, that's not how they look at it. And it's just a different commodity.
Well, it sounds to me, and maybe I'm oversimplifying or misunderstanding, but it sounds to me like basically you are charging the water connection people what amounts to an average cost, and you're charging the gas people what amounts to a marginal cost.
Well, when we set that connection fee, and certainly I will say that, we didn't put that in place because we gave people notice until January, so that's still out for us to evaluate whether it's going to work or not work, frankly, because we've only seen 23 new connections since January 1st. There hasn't been a lot of activity associated with that.
Is that just a seasonal thing, or?
It could be, since we gave people notice, they had some time to, already get on the books what they planned on doing the first quarter. So we have to just, I would suggest we wait and see what happens, because it's still a little early,
But is my marginal cost versus average cost analysis a correct way of looking at it, or am I misunderstanding?
Maybe Mr. Cullinan can help me with this, but the way we, because we set they're modeled through our water and sewer rates. Yeah.
So again, keep in mind for the water and wastewater connection fees, those are to pay for infrastructure capacity. And in both cases, we still have outstanding debt associated with those investments. And so as new
new customers come on, they pay the proportionate share of the capacity that we've already put in place for them, anticipating their arrival. The gas utility has no debt. Its capital improvement plan is relatively minor compared to water and wastewater. And so there just isn't anything there to charge for that additional capacity. That capacity is there, it's been paid for. And so the basis of actually setting that charge for capacity is different. Now, where we start mixing things up is actually connection is, so when you get a new utility service, there are a couple of different pieces that you're paying. Connection piece is actually for the meter to come out and attach it to the city system. And so those numbers are relatively much smaller compared to a capacity fee. Because again, we're talking about pipes and bigger infrastructure. And I guess the only other thing I would comment is just that, again, keep in mind that fees and rates are meant to be proportionate to the cost to provide those things. And so when I hear the words...
But proportionate requires establishing both a numerator and a denominator. And if one of them is on an average basis and one of them is on a marginal basis, you're not doing it the same way between the two. And what you're saying to me is that you're charging the gas people based on a marginal cost, and you're charging the water people based on an average cost.
No,
because you're factoring fixed costs into the water, but you're not factoring into
they're
the gas.
proportionate to the meter size. So somebody setting a brand new 5-inch, 8-inch meter is paying something different than somebody setting a 1-inch or a 3-inch or a 4-inch. Again, it's based on the capacity that's going through that. So it is marginal in that regard on the impacts on the capacity of the water and wastewater system.
But the way in which if in one system you are charging the cost of the debt service and the construction of the system, and the other piece isn't getting charged for the debt service and the cost of
because it doesn't exist,
and the cost of having put in the entire system. I mean, it's clear to me that the gas people are getting a heck of a deal, and the water people are getting screwed.
It's the difference in the infrastructure. Because again, as we've talked about in some of the past presentations, the gas system, when it went to all plastic back in the 90s and 2000s, that infrastructure is good for 50, 60, 70 years. And so that system is modernized. The debt service has been retired. There are no costs associated with that capacity anymore. Whereas water and wastewater, we are continuing to make those investments on an annual basis. And so again, it's just the nature of the systems as being entirely different from an infrastructure perspective.
Let me ask a slightly different question. It was mentioned that we've added roughly 500 new gas customers in the last, I guess, year. Where are those folks? Are those folks city folks, county folks? Where are they coming from?
I've heard that figure. I don't know what the details are.
You know, Ms. Hildebrand?
Well, I mentioned that during my presentation that we look at the customers served at a point in time. If we were to look at the customers served right now, they would be a lot less in gas, for example, because we're running a report off of SAP, and it's looking at the number of customers served, so the number of active accounts. If we were looking at, like I had someone inquire today of utility billing, what would that number be? It'd be less than what we reported right now, because it fluctuates with the season.
I think what Councilor Snook is asking is, have we opened 500 new accounts in the last year?
No, we have not.
I'll say in the full.
And where did that number come up?
The full annual report, the number of natural gas customers was 21,050 in 2024, and in 2025 the number was 21,600.
Yeah. So, but if I were to look to run a report on it today, the number of customers served would be a lot less. And it's mainly because people, UVA's just gone back to, they're not in session, their houses aren't being rented. So that number does fluctuate based on the season.
But that's not the number. Maybe we'll put it slightly differently. If what we're trying to do is to figure out whether we have incentivized or disincentivized people going to gas, it seems for whatever reason we have incentivized people to continue to go to gas. And we have 540, I guess it was, more accounts, whether they're using it in June because it's hot already, or whether it's, there are 540 more people connected to the gas service now than there were a year ago.
At that point in time, a year ago.
And if we're thinking that part of what we want to be doing with our structure and all of this is to figure out how to push people the way we'd like to push them, we're not doing that. And maybe we decide, well, we really aren't supposed to be doing that because we're supposed to be just doing it on the basis of actual costs, however we want to calculate that. In which case, I guess the question is, should we be thinking about other ways to encourage people to go away from gas and towards an all-electric model or something like that? I'm just concerned that I think we're headed in the wrong direction. Anyway.
Okay.
Are we legally allowed to change the gas connection fee to any number that we want, or does it have to be related to something?
Disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. But in the public finance world, the rates and fees have to be proportionate to the actual cost to provide what it is that you're charging for. And it's the idea of public versus private benefit. Fees and rates are meant to reflect more of a private benefit, so that cost should be whatever it takes to do that thing. And that's true of just fees in general, whether it's gas, whatever. But that's always been the standard from a public finance perspective that I've understood to be. And so to me, incentive, disincentive, I don't use those words because it's just the cost to provide that thing. It's in the eye of the beholder, is this an incentive or a disincentive for me to do that thing? And again, that's based on the person seeking the service and paying the fee.
So we couldn't say charge the $13,000 it costs to connect water to
I would strongly
gas.
recommend against that.
How come?
For that reason, it doesn't cost that.
But we don't know, right, in this conversation.
Well,
if
that
that's
would be the
legal.
analysis that would have to be done. But because we have no debt service attached to it, we have no seemingly infrastructure costs attached to the gas utility, I don't know how you would ever get to that number.
Unless we came up with a project that costs money.
Right, unless it was a capacity-related project. That's the other sort of nuance of capacity fees. I'm going to use that word because it's a little more clear.
Okay. And is this $6 million question that gets turned over to the general fund? What's that about?
So, and it's true for water and wastewater as well. So there's a payment in lieu of taxes, and I know you all talk a lot about pilots. Let me just explain what this one is. And what this is meant to depict is it's an expense of the utility as if it were a private utility operating within the city limits. And so if it was a private utility, it would be subject to real estate taxes, sales tax, any fees that are associated with operating within the city. And so it's a common feature of most utilities in Virginia, if not across the country. We've had that looked at a number of years ago. And again, it's an expense of the utility, it's included in the utility calculations, and that money is remitted back to the general fund as if it were a private entity being taxed. Now, that's a choice. That's a choice for you all. And we've broached this with past councils in the past, and I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but you would immediately need to take out about $8 to $9 million of the general fund that you just adopted, because and I think it's not in the top 5, but it's in the top 10 revenues coming back to the general fund. So it's a financial choice for council as to whether to charge this or not. And so if you directed me to say, we're not going to collect these anymore, we're going to take it out of the budget, make those adjustments as needed in the general fund, we would take that right out of the utility rates. Because again, it's an expense of the utility, but if we're not charging it, then it goes out. So it really, to me, boils down to a financial choice by council.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
And then just one final comment also from the full annual report, just that the total amount Over the entire 6 years of the low-income weatherization programs, the city spent $282,000 total over all 6 years. That's about the amount we spend on the carbon credits each year. And I think that just highlights the impact that could be had if we switch those carbon credits to local expenditures.
Okay. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is an ordinance to amend and reenact Article 9, the transient occupancy tax. It's Chapter 30, and Mr. Dykers.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. City Manager, Madam Clerk, here to lighten the mood. I'm going to talk about Airbnb. My favorite. What we need to do tonight is make some tweaks to the transient occupancy tax ordinance to keep it in line with what was done by the General Assembly this year. In a nutshell, Airbnb came to the table and said they want to stop fighting, which was, music to my ears. They have, for the last 5-6 years, they, while their competitors have been providing gross receipts and address information for their hosts, Airbnb has not done that. Whether they got new advice from general counsel or whatever, they came to the table this year and they said, we're ready to give that information, but they wanted some things in return, and so this is one of the things that they wanted in return. They want for their hosts who book exclusively through online intermediaries not to have to file a transient occupancy tax return every month. Currently, they're doing it, they file a zero because all of the taxes are currently being assessed and paid by Airbnb or by VRBO or whatever the case may be. So the taxes are getting paid. The hosts are just filing a zero return. A lot of them, I don't know if it's most or not. We're okay with this. This is just, we're just pushing paper around. We're fine with that going away. What they will have to do instead is they will file an attestation every year that all of their bookings are managed through an online intermediary. We get to specify when that attestation is due. If they happen to book something outside of an online intermediary or they do the booking themselves, then they still have to report that. Now, how I would know about that or how we would learn about that, I have no idea. But that they are still required to file and pay if they do the booking. But if the booking's done through Airbnb, Airbnb collects it, pays it, and now they're going to give us the address and the gross receipts associated with it, and that will allow us to, pursue business license or business tangible property tax, things like that. So we're very pleased with this. The other piece that we're doing tonight is just some housekeeping on some terminology that we adopted a few years ago that is not in line with state code. For instance, state code refers to accommodations or accommodations intermediaries or accommodations providers. So an accommodation provider would be a host. An accommodations intermediary would be Airbnb. Our code says lodging provider, lodging intermediary. So we just want to try to get those things. The meaning is the same. Questions? Did you guys had some questions about Airbnb last time, I think. I was ready. Let's get into this.
Well, I guess my question is this going to make any difference to our bottom line?
No. We're already getting the money. It will give us a little bit more, it will give us a way to make sure that the money is correct. So for instance, if they're currently giving us money for lodgings that are taking place in Albemarle County, we'll be able to see that and catch it and correct it. And likewise, if some of our money's going to Albemarle County, they can catch it. And so that's why we want this. And then we'll get a little bit on BPOL and we'll get a little bit on business tangibles, but it's a transparency thing primarily.
Okay. So I know one of the hopes was that coming out of this, whatever was going to happen in Richmond, that we would get a little extra something.
No, not going to be much money. I mean, like I said, most, like somebody running an Airbnb is usually paying a $35 business license, so it's not much there, and they're not using a lot of business equipment. So but it'll be something. I have no idea how much.
I'll say, in addition to the dodging of the tax revenue, I think it's a huge problem in a city of 10 square miles that can't expand. Airbnb and hotels crowding out housing investment is a particularly huge issue because we can't expand. Whatever they take, that's an opportunity for housing going away. So anyway, it's bigger than this, but I think we're losing more than we're gaining from this wonderful Silicon Valley app.
No
So-
comment. You might be right.
So if this was a request from Airbnb, like, we'll finally be truthful about our data if you change this requirement, is there motivation that it just makes it easier for their users so that people are
I think
more
so,
likely to
because a lot of
use it?
localities were doing it the same way we were. You know, we were saying, well, if you're not going to give us the data, we're going to go to the people who have the data, and that's the hosts. And so we were pestering the crap out of the hosts to give us the data that Airbnb wouldn't give us. And so then Airbnb, I think, heard from their hosts and said, please fix this. And so I think they came to the table.
Does this
with a
give us
suggestion.
more
Thank you.
information or data in terms of how many units are being rented? Or do we already have that?
No, it'll give us a lot more information about that.
So more-
Now, there's another shoe that hasn't dropped yet. Did you want to finish your question?
No, go right away.
The other shoe is, that hasn't dropped yet, is they tightened up the privacy language in 58.1-3. So the data that they give to us, we cannot share with the zoning folks. Now, there's a lot of localities who don't already. As a matter of course, they view that data as private taxpayer information, so they don't share it. I don't tend to agree, but with the new language, we're not going to share it. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, and that's why, you know, we're going to get that software from, I think it's going to be Granicus, yeah, and, you know, that should be able to give us what we need, that we weren't, or, you know, that should allow us to give NDS what they need that I can't give them directly from Airbnb.
Yeah, to Michael's point, I just would be very interested in how many of these units are being rented and what percentage of our housing stock is going towards that.
Right.
You probably have some sense already, but I think more specifics would be helpful. And-
Yeah. This will give us a pretty good idea, and then, you know, the
And
software, the scraping tools that we're gonna be getting with this new software are pretty impressive, so, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested when we have the conversation about the transit occupancy tax next year, you know, are there,
The homestay ordinance?
no, just the TOT amount, you know, if that,
It shouldn't change that much, because we're already getting the tax. We
I'm just
don't know
wondering,
what
to Michael's point, does it make sense to increase it to change the cost benefit for people as they're evaluating?
Oh, that's above my pay grade.
Okay.
You can't change it for just the
separately.
homestays. I mean, you'd have to change it for
For all
everybody.
hotels.
Yeah, hotels
Right,
and
but
everybody.
maybe.
I'm curious, when do we get the software that'll help us?
They are in negotiations with the vendor now, I think, and working on how to pay for it. So like what you guys approved for this fiscal, or for the coming fiscal year, we're hoping to actually have it in place. NDS had some money that they're gonna use to go ahead and get it up and running, hopefully in FY '25.
Because I'm kind of interested in thinking about the order of operations here, where if we will do this agenda item first, then that data is locked away from our zoning folks having easily accessible information.
Yes.
Whereas if we get the software first, we get all that info, we can share it with zoning. And then if we do this, someone can I'm just trying to figure out if somehow doing this first creates an extra step
Not
for
really. I mean,
zoning down the
we're going to
line?
have to do this at some point, because we're literally just mirroring language in state code. And even if we don't adopt the language in our local code, state code's going to trump what we have in there. So we want it in our local code.
And how come
We need it by July 1st.
how come there's a clause that says you can't share it with zoning?
They tightened up the language. 58.1-3 is the section of code that contains the secrecy provisions of taxpayer information. That's sort of our Bible of, if that's why, tax officials can't share other people, taxpayers' tax information. There are some things that we can share, but gross receipts and things like that, we cannot share. They are secret, and there are criminal penalties if we divulge them. And so they went into that section, tightened it up, and said, this data that is going to be going to commissioners of the revenue now is just as secure.
So that's a state code.
Yes.
And so there's no way around it anyway.
No.
Got it. Okay.
It's wonderful to have a lobbying arm. But if there's no other, I would move the ordinance to amend and reenact Article 9, Transit Occupancy Tax, of Chapter 30, Taxation of the Code of the City of Charlottesville, Virginia, based on the ordinance that is in our packet.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? All in favor say yes.
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 All opposed say no. Great, passes 5-0. The next item on the
Thank you
agenda.
all.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Todd.
The next item on the agenda is the Move Safely Blue Ridge Regional Safety Action Plan and East High Street Demonstration Project, alternative selection, and Ben will present.
Yeah, good evening. I'm back again. So there's actually going to be two presentations here.
Yeah.
The first is going to be on our safety action plan, which TJPDC staff is going to present to you. That'll be followed by a vote on whether you accept that safety action plan. And then I'll follow up with another presentation that will walk us through the demonstration project that comes out of that and look for a vote for you to accept that alternative as our preferred alternative. So first I'll turn it over to Gorion to kick us off with the TJPDC presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. My name is Gorion Georgievsky. I'm a regional planner at the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, working on the Move Safely Blue Ridge initiative. I'm here tonight to present to you the draft comprehensive safety action plan that was provided to you. I really hope you looked at it in details because it is about safety, not just in the city of Charlottesville, but also for the rest of our jurisdictions within the Thomas Jefferson Planning District. Tonight's agenda will include the background of the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, City of Charlottesville leadership commitment, the planning process, emphasis in areas in the high injury network, public engagement, proposed solutions, and next steps. Move Safely is the region's plan to reduce roadway fatalities and serious injuries for all road users regardless of their mode of transportation. In 2021, a bill was signed into law that became the bipartisan infrastructure law. This law established the Safe Streets and Roads for All discretionary program, which supports the United States Department of Transportation National Roadway Safety Strategy and its vision of zero fatalities by 2050 using a safe system approach. This slide highlights the City of Charlottesville leadership commitment from 2018 to 2022. 208 people were killed or seriously injured on the city's roadways. The City Council recognized this, and on March 5th, 2024, signed a resolution to eliminate the total number, to eliminate fatalities and reduce the total number of serious injuries by half by 2045. I want to thank the board for making that leadership commitment, because the adoption of this plan is a key step in fulfilling that goal, as ultimately it will position the city to be eligible applicant for implementation funding in future rounds of the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. Before I talk about the planning process for this project, I want to acknowledge the project team who, besides TJPDC, consisted of the working group members, represented by staff from each of the jurisdictions, as well as VDOT. Their feedback and input in all of the components of the plan was very valuable, and not just for the planning process. The planning process for this project consists of 4 key components and is supported by 3 rounds of public engagement. All of that combined serves as the foundation for the development of the final comprehensive safety action plan for adoption. I mentioned the period from 2018 to 2022. That is because our crash data for this project was from that period. It's identified around 13 emphasis areas, which are the key factors that contribute to fatalities and serious injuries. Ultimately, the project team used these emphasis areas to identify the needs and potential solutions for the project. Another methodology that the project team developed for this initiative was the high injury network methodology. This serves as a map that shows the highest concentration of crashes that resulted in fatalities and serious injuries. So from 2018 to 2022, 84% of those crashes occurred on just 17% of the road miles in the city. Public engagement was a key component for the plan. It was very important to get the public input, not just for the potential solutions, but also to identify all of their concerns and issues when traveling through and in the city. We did that in 3 rounds. 2 rounds included a survey in which we gathered their feedback. In round 1, we identified issues and opportunities. In round 2, we engaged in strategies and collaborated on proposed solutions. A little bit more details about the public engagement that we did in the city. We kicked off the project with a regional safety summit. Then we did pop-up events. We went out to where the public was. We attended the Charlottesville City Market, Farmers in the Park, Fridays after 5. We also held a public meeting at the Carver's Recreation Center. For round 2, we followed the same steps. Another thing that we did is we held a roundtable discussion with farmers and ranchers from the region so they can share their concerns when it comes to transportation safety using farm vehicles. This slide highlights the spot-specific improvements. There is a lot of them, and I'm mindful of the time that I have to present, so I'm not going to go through all of these, but I really hope that you looked in details. I want to mention that these spot-specific improvements were identified in collaboration with city staff as well as VDOT. I also want to mention that in the plan, we have acknowledged other VDOT efforts that are occurring in the city. But for this spot-specific improvements for the city, we have 9. They include comprehensive pedestrian upgrades, ramps, roundabouts, crosswalks, and many other things. Another part of the solutions that we have, or another category of the proposed solutions that we have in the plan, are the systemic improvements. These can be implemented across the entire network in the city. They include high visibility backplates, improved signal timing strategies, flashing yellow arrows, speed limit evaluations, and leading pedestrian intervals. The candidate locations for these solutions are documented in the safety action plan. Third and last category of the proposed solutions are the non-engineering policies and programs. These go through educational campaigns, implement support programs, curb management policies, red light cameras at intersection, high visibility saturation patrol for impaired driving. We have a couple examples here, but there's over 30 identified in the plan document. The next step for this is, as I mentioned, adoption of this plan will position the city as an eligible applicant for implementation funding through the future Safe Streets and Roads for All programs. There's currently one round ongoing with application deadlines in June 2026, and then there is another round after that with approximately $1 billion. I just want to mention that the next round is going to be the last round for implementation funding that we know of. We're not sure what's going to happen in the future, but implementation funding is going to be a lot more competitive when it comes to the last round. Then we have a Smart Scale, Highway Safety Improvement Program, and revenue sharing funding. The project team also plans to do an annual update of the crash data on the Move Safely Blue Ridge website. This will help all of our jurisdictions be in trends like with current safety strategies and also refine their strategies in the future as needed. That's the end of my slides. I just want to mention that with the adoption of this plan, City of Charlottesville will be able to create safer and more efficient transportation safety network, not just for people who live in the city, but also people who travel through. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Brian, you have any questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Very early in your slide deck, there were 2 pages of those project IDs and countermeasures and so on. Have those been approved? Are those just suggestions? What's the status?
So yeah, suggestions is the right term. They are proposed solutions that will be identified in the plan, or they are present in the plan. These solutions can turn into implementations projects to increase this, obviously to increase the safety for residents in the city.
Is there anything that we're being asked to vote on here that declares that we are in favor of those particular projects?
I mean, yeah, you can certainly look at them and provide any feedback, but as I mentioned before, these solutions or these spot-specific improvements were discussed with VDOT and city staff before we came out to City Council to present them.
But it's not requiring any of these?
No. You could apply for all of them. You could apply for none of them.
Right.
But in order for them to be able to be applied for, they have to be identified in the plan.
And are we identifying the locations that are problems, and is that what's required, that we identify the locations that are problems, or is it required that we identify specific solutions that we would then want to secure funding for?
So the requirement is the specific solutions, but they're both identified in the plan, specific solutions as a requirement, but also based on the crash data, we're focusing on the most severe or high-risk spots.
So are we essentially affirming this plan so that we can be able to make the next step in a process?
Right.
I think this is more like, sort of painting with really broad strokes, and then the next phase will take us into more finer detail, if that makes sense.
Yeah, all of these projects will require further evaluation when it comes to implementation.
I just want to make sure that if we say yes to this plan tonight, that we are not saying, here's how we want to solve the problem at East High Street and Meade Avenue.
Not necessarily. I mean, as I said, it will require further evaluation when it comes to, if the city decides to go for either one of these projects, then slightly different solutions might come up from that analysis.
Yeah, we don't know the specifics. So I'm curious, Ben, is this aligned with the 34 priorities
Some of these are included in that list. Some of these are also things that would come up in later forms of our planning, like We've talked about some of the corridor planning that we'll need to do down the line. Some of that's baked into this as well.
Got it. Lord, have you finished your comments?
Well, I guess I'm pretty sure I understand what you're telling me, though I don't understand why it's worthwhile for us to do it. Because if we're not agreeing that we have specific countermeasures in mind, or we're not even agreeing, I take it, that these are the top 8 or 9 areas where we have improvements we want made, I guess I'm kind of wondering why
I think it's essentially.
why the detail is there at all.
It's something that this is sort of like an initial pass through the system that identifies in sort of general terms and general locations issues.
Somewhat, but we are actually focusing on the highest priority locations. So there is some prioritization to this that is saying that these are the most important places for us to be looking. As for the specific countermeasures, yes, listing them does mean that those are things that we are committing to potentially looking at and potentially asking for funding for, but it's not saying we're definitely doing all of these things.
Okay. Because I would hate to have it thought that anybody on this dais had actually critically examined any of these proposals, because we haven't.
Sure, and to speak to the top one on our list at
We've
East High and
examined that
Mead,
one. Well,
that's
that
the one
one,
I'm
yes.
presenting on next, actually, and we'll go through a demonstration project that evaluates whether that is the solution we would want to go forward with.
I mean, something like suggested countermeasures might be a more helpful term, but.
Well, I'm not concerned about it, given what you told me. I just wondered why the detail is there if it's that.
And part of it is the guidance that the Safe Streets for All action plan requires through the federal guidance that we
So if somebody
have.
wants to come up to me and say, I understand you just approved a roundabout at McIntyre and Preston Avenue, I want to be able to say, no, I didn't.
You did not.
I may like the idea,
approved
but
a plan that said we should look at that further.
And like you said, you're following federal funding opportunities, which can be very clunky in terms of requirements.
Right, absolutely.
Michael, do you have any comments?
No.
Natalie, you have any?
No, thank you.
Thank you. So
I would move the resolution to adopt the Move Safely Blue Ridge Regional Safety Action Plan.
Second.
Second, further discussion? All in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed, please say no. Great. Now we're here for a resolution selecting a preferred alternative design for East High Street demonstration project.
Yes, so this is a follow-on to the previous presentation and a little bit about that very first area that we highlighted as being a safety issue, and that is East High Street. So as part of the scope of our safety action plan, the city also was given a demonstration project to test a design for a potential safety intervention. And part of this is because we were doing a regional safety action plan. We're the urbanized area of the region, and we have a little bit of a different need than some of our more rural partners. So we were looking at how do we deal with some of these bike ped safety needs that maybe don't pop up in our rural neighbors. The analysis that you just passed showed that this was one of our biggest issues, was safety along East High Street corridor. This is a corridor that has lots of breaks in the sidewalk network, lots of places where you might want to have a crosswalk to cross the road, but there isn't a safe place to put one in today based on road geometry and sightline. And so we wanted to see, are there some things that we can change up in this little quadrant around East High Street, Mead Avenue, Stewart Street, that could make things a little bit safer for pedestrians getting through, calm down traffic coming through the residential neighborhood streets through there, and make the flow of traffic a little bit more logical. So we came up with some design options for how that might happen, looking at turning Mead into a one-way in one direction or the other, or two-way with a pinch-off at the northern end. We took these options to a public open house at the end of February. We also had a survey out during that time asking people for feedback on these options. So these options were looking at moving the traffic signal from Mead Avenue and East High Street to Stewart Street. That was one of the major changes. And then changing the flow of traffic up and down Mead Street, trying to move some of that traffic onto Stewart Street, which is a more of a commercial corridor. We received 268 responses on our survey. Many of those responses were in favor of the option that would keep Meade Avenue as two-way, but make it so that you could only go northbound at the intersection. So there's sort of a two-way traffic along the section of Meade Avenue that we're talking about, but at that intersection, you can only go northbound. So that would allow the people who are living on that street to still be able to get in and out of their house without having to change their travel pattern completely, but it would impact some of the folks who are traveling through those neighborhoods. Out of the responses, we got some indication that some folks wanted an option that was none of the above. Out of those, we had about 81 responses. Out of those, even those people said the two-way option, if we're going to put down anything, was probably the most preferable of the ones that we had in front of us. So what this option does, it adds an always stop at Meade Avenue and Stewart Street intersection. It adds additional marked crossings at East High intersection. It adds a refuge space for that crossing on East High in the existing left turn lane, which would be removed as we remove that left turn and the traffic signal that's associated with it. And we revised some of the curbing associated with that option 2 that we put in front of everyone that had that two-way travel. Some of the curbing that we had marked at that intersection was blocking some driveways and things like that, and the business owners let us know about that, and we worked out how that would work a little bit better, and so that's shown in this diagram as well. So what we are looking for tonight is a resolution of support to go after this preferred alternative that had been tweaked from our option 2. The next step after having that resolution would be getting our final roadway marking schematics from our consultant support, and then purchasing materials. Purchasing materials is really going to be the next bottleneck in the timeline. The materials in question that are probably going to give us the most issue are the temporary signals. So when we shut down the signal at Meade and put a new signal at Stewart, that's not a full-time signal, that's a temporary signal that we'll only have in place during this test period. Once we have the materials and we're ready to deploy, we would put this demonstration project in place for 60 days, collecting data and feedback from neighbors and travelers who are coming through that area on the changes that have happened. And then after 60 days, the chariot turns into a pumpkin and everything goes back to the way it was. The reason it goes back to the way it was is because we want to eventually be able to come back and do it right. We want to do it the permanent way, putting in actual streetlights at Stewart, making sure that all of these things work through the demo project before we go out and ask the federal government or the state government for some funding to help us in this corridor. I'll also remind you that this East High Street corridor is a Tier 3 sidewalk. We talked a little bit about sidewalks in my earlier presentation this evening. Tier 3 sidewalks are the ones that we have not identified funding for design or construction for, because we know that these are going to be big, heavy lifts. And when it comes to those big, heavy lifts, it helps to have some demonstration, some plans, a good idea of what you're trying to build before you try to get that funding for permanent investment. So that's what we're trying to do with this project. After 60 days, we go back to normal, but we have all the good info in our pocket, and that lets us go on and do some more grant applications. And so that's all I have for you tonight.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Natalie, you can go for it.
Yes, please.
Yes, hi. So back to the diagram, if you
Yep.
scoot that way. So there's the always stop being added to Stewart in both directions on Meade. The lowest stop sign in this diagram is as you're coming up the hill just past Fairway. So I'm just curious about the design there for people exiting Fairway and whether or not the stop sign would be better at Fairway for those northbound folks, since if cars are stopping like 50 feet up, people coming out of Fairway are not going to be able to see the left at all.
We can look at that, I think, still because we still have to do the final schematics for things, but I would have some concerns about, you have the 2 stop signs at Stewart and Meade, and then you'd have one a block away, and it'd be kind of difficult to understand how to navigate through that, but we can look into seeing how that might be able to be feasible.
Because it's already tough enough turning left out of Fairway, and then if you can't see because cars are there, it's gonna be even harder. Also on this design, the northbound lane of Mead is where folks park. Are those parking spots maintained?
All the parking is maintained in this one, yes.
Okay. And then those are all my design questions. I have a procedural question about that 60-day timeframe. I assume after those 60 days is when you'll do analysis and
Yeah, there would be
come
some.
back with a presentation about stuff. Does it have to come out?
We would recommend that it comes out just because it's temporary materials and those would be hard to maintain. If there was a directive for us to keep it there, that would be a different story, but it would be our suggestion that, yes, it would come out and not be a permanent fixture.
The reason why I ask is because if it like turns out to be working and we want it there, it feels like then it would be duplicating work to put it in again or put it in again while we wait for the permanent funding.
Yeah, if it turns out to be wildly successful and everyone loves this thing and wants to keep it, we can look for ways to keep it rolling. But right now, we just want to only commit to that 60 days until we actually know what we're getting ourselves into and actually see how it's performing.
Is it worth changing that? I don't know, the resolution doesn't put a time, oh, it does say for up to 60 days?
It does have a time. If we need to amend that later because it's doing great, I wouldn't have a problem bringing you a different resolution.
Should we amend it now? Just like, if we like it, it stays, but like in better language?
I'll leave that up to you.
You would still have to indicate that you like it, so it would still require bringing it back to hear that from you all.
Right.
So-
Where did the 60 days come from?
That was just recommended by staff. That was just
Okay.
us thinking that sounds like a good enough timeline. Initially, we thought we would be able to potentially fit this in during the summer if we get those materials in. It's kind of dependent on if we could get those materials in, but we were hoping that 60-day window would fall during the summer, so it wouldn't necessarily affect school, because we have a school right around the corner from that location, so
Would it be useful to have information about how this would affect school?
it could be. And we may just luck into that just by the schedule as well.
Okay, I would be open to changing the language in here so that it says something to the effect of data collected for 60 days to then be evaluated and, recommendations brought after that point, and then we can kind of reevaluate just in case we like it so that we're not duplicating that work. Unless the kind of temporary materials you're talking about are like gonna disintegrate.
No, but it's, I'm not sure how long we want to leave temporary signals out, and some of our marking paints would have to be reapplied and things like that, but,
Yeah.
You could authorize me to extend it, and therefore I can make the call.
Yeah, can we somehow bake it in that like we revisit the length before it gets ripped out? So that we remember to do that, or,
Say that again?
like
Could we do it?
we somehow have a chat about it at 56 days or something, so that we can revisit it before
Yeah, that's
the
my.
work is done to take
That's the
out.
basis of me saying, if you authorize me to extend it, then I can make that call. I would check with you all and determine that there's support for carrying it forward, and provided the materials are still of good quality, we can just let it stay in place.
And do we need to change the language in here?
Just
to
adding
bring
the
that?
authorization of the city manager
Okay.
for extending it.
Okay.
I think the change would need to be made by motion.
Okay.
Could I ask a couple questions?
Yeah, before we do that.
before we do that. Other people
Natalie,
have
do you
questions.
have any more questions or comments?
No more questions, other than I'm worried a little bit about that stoplight and Fairway, the stop sign and the Fairway business of it
And I
all.
think that's the whole purpose, is kind of see, if it.
Yeah.
if it-
Oh, actually, I do have one more question. I know this was one of 3 suggested alternatives. There were other alternatives suggested in the responses. So is there a plan, maybe, at 60 days, we know like, oh, yikes, this is bad, or not as good as we thought it was gonna be, we wanna try one of the other alternatives? Is that one of the future work plans?
I would have to ask you for more money if
Yeah.
we're doing that. We basically have set aside a budgeted amount for this project, and if it comes out that we need to do it again, I'd have to ask you for more
Okay,
money.
be a whole nother, okay, thank you.
Michael?
So my only question is, I'm curious how this will work. I think one weird benefit could be the businesses on Stewart Street actually benefit. But I could see it going well, or I could see a lot of people being very frustrated. Point being, you said you're going to be collecting traffic data and feedback from people in that area. What would the kind of feedback look like for you to say this didn't work?
We're going to be collecting feedback on, does this feel safer? That's going to be pretty much the primary thing that we're asking folks. And if the answer is no, that's a big problem for us. We're also going to be asking different things like, did this encourage you to walk more or bike more and things like that would be good indicators for us. But the overall feedback that we're looking for is, did this make you feel safe? If it didn't, what were the elements that made this a problem for you? To your point about the businesses on Stewart Street, we did do a lot of outreach with the businesses along this area. The businesses on Stewart Street were very excited about this. There were some businesses that had some concerns about how cut-through traffic might affect their businesses, but there were others that were like, hey, we wish that we had this problem a long time ago, and that would have helped our business a lot more, and they're looking forward to this test and seeing how it'll go.
Yeah. Okay. That's the only question I had. I mean, I'm comfortable and good with this.
So to be clear, the money that we're getting from this action is letting you install something temporary to essentially run a test.
So what the money from our Move Safely Blue Ridge scope allowed us to do all of the design, do all the public outreach, basically have consultant support.
Okay.
And now we'll be using neighborhood transportation improvement dollars from the city budget to do this test.
To run this test.
Yeah.
Do you already have a sense if it'll work or not?
I'm hoping that it will work. I don't know that it'll work, but I know that this will help us create better sight lines so we can put in a crosswalk, and I think that works. I don't know.
I guess my question is, looking at it, I mean, on the one hand, I can see how it makes a lot of sense to run an experiment. On the other hand, if you think the thing will work, why don't we just do it, and
I think there is enough uncertainty about whether we do think it's going to work that it's hard for us to go after the amount of funding that it will take to do it right. So we want to make sure that it is clear that we have decided that this thing actually does work and that we do have the community support. Right now, there's a little bit of uncertainty, even in this room, about whether it's going to work.
So
we want to be certain before we go after millions of dollars of funding.
So that's what it would take, the actual investment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there are major constraints in this corridor that are going to require a lot of money for concrete.
So this is basically going to give you more refined information about, so that you make a better overall decision for that corridor.
Right, and it also gives us another leg to stand on while we're going after a grant. Every plan that you have that supports a project, every demonstration that you've done, every policy that supports a certain project helps you in that grant application process. And having a project that says, hey, we already tried this, we know what works and what doesn't, is a much better sell to our partners in the federal government and state government.
I see. Yeah, because I can envision some frustration on folks that use that every day to be like, okay, so we're doing this for 60 days and then you're reverting, or maybe it's 90 days, whatever. Anyway, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Lloyd, you have any? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have one more that's related. You mentioned East High being a Tier 3 corridor street for the sidewalk project. I assume I hope that if the pipeline project happens and they're ripping up the street at the lower end of East High, will somehow, as it gets rebuilt, the sidewalk is incorporated?
I
into
haven't
the
looked at
rebuild?
their plans for that part of the
That's somewhere
water
down the
line,
line,
and we'll have to talk through that because that's a multi-year project, and we'll have to understand where the schedule for that falls. But yes, that is something that we keep an eye on. Is
It's
are
in
there
the
opportunities?
back burner somewhere.
Yeah,
I think it's south of here, though.
Right, it's further down East High.
Yeah.
Closer to 250.
I would move the resolution selecting a preferred alternative design for the East High Street demonstration project, amended to include language that the demonstration project can be extended beyond 60 days by authorization of the city manager.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Okay.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
all
you.
so much. Appreciate you. We're now at general business, and we have a, Sam, are you doing this next
Yes.
time? Okay.
So, councilors, the general business item is by motion. I am officially presenting John Maddox as my selection for serving as the next city attorney for the city of Charlottesville. Having secured your concurrence with that selection, we are now able to bring forward his contract, or I shouldn't say contract, his employment agreement. But John joined the city on May 14th, at that time as managing director of the city attorney's office because he had to go through the process of gaining admittance to the Virginia bar. That actually was something that we anticipated taking a lot longer. Thankfully, he called me and we both were excited that it was not going to take that much longer. So he will be sworn in at the State Supreme Court on June 4th this week. And I am presenting to you his employment agreement for him to take responsibility fully for the office on Friday, June 6th. The employment agreement that you have in your packet identifies that he will serve in this capacity at an annual salary of $205,000, and that he will manage the current workflow of the office going forward and transition the engagement of Sands Anderson as acting city attorney represented by Pamela O'Berry.
Yay.
Yeah. Any questions on this?
Yeah, I don't know, this is just pure curiosity. How long does that transition period typically take? Or how long are we aiming it?
Well, I'll be honest, we've already started the transition because he has assumed responsibility for things that he could actually do, like running the office itself. So all staff started reporting to him immediately. We had to be careful of him not practicing law, so he knows where to stop, and we received guardrails for where to ensure that he stopped. So we're working through that process, but ultimately he will shift into full responsibility, and he will continue to have Sands engaged in some of the things that are being off-ramped. And I guess I can allow him to speak to that as well if there's any reflection you want to offer on what you are anticipating.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Yes, it's going to be a transition. Pamela Berry, say a big thank you to her. She's been wonderful in helping me get acclimated here. She's done a great job making sure that we're set up to succeed as I come on. As we build more capacity in the office, as you know, we still have a number of vacancies, but I'm already making moves to hopefully get those filled, and hopefully as we get those filled, we'll have to rely on outside counsel less, but you cannot understate the value of having somebody who's an expert in just certain subject matters that we're going to come across. SANS has a deep bench as far as that goes, and they've already been very helpful to us. So it'll be a taper, but I'm hoping to recoup some of those fees and that we've been having to spend over the past year or so, and put them back towards things that we'd rather spend money on.
Great, thanks. I appreciate hearing that we already too.
Absolutely.
Any other comments? If not, I get a motion to approve this?
I would move his approval as our new city attorney.
Second.
Further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please say no. So we now have the opportunity for
Actually,
the-
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. One thing, if we could, Ms. O'Berry is on. I would like to have her turn her camera on. She knows I'm asking her to do this. So if she could be promoted, please. All right.
Mr. Barrett, can you hear us?
I can hear you and I can see you.
There we go. Okay. So I wanted just one single indulgence and then to offer council any opportunity as well. But I wanted to personally thank Ms. O'Berry for her professionalism, her support of the city of Charlottesville in this period of transition. It's always difficult when you're dealing with the loss of a key leadership position, but it is always great to have partners available to step in the gap. She has been that. She has led a number of great initiatives that have helped the city in the past year, and I just wanted to publicly thank her for that, and hopefully give you all, as council members, an opportunity to say the same.
Yes, thank you so much. I know this is for a city of 50,000. I know we kept you hopping, so that's how we roll. But thank you so much for stepping in during that critical gap. So I don't know if others have something.
Yeah, we're very grateful for your support and certainly wish you all the best.
Yes.
Yep.
And also thanks for staying on and helping with the transition.
Yes, yes.
If I could also offer thanks, Pam, thank you so much for working with me. This is Keena, through so many items. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You take care.
Thank you.
And I just want to say it's been my honor and my pleasure to support the city of Charlottesville and your wonderful staff and citizens. It's certainly, I've learned a lot, and I've just met some wonderful people, and I hope to continue those relationships as we move forward. And I wish the best to John. I think you've made a good pick, and the city is in good hands.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great picture, too. Thank you. So this is the next item on the agenda, is the last opportunity for community matters. So if anyone would like to speak, if you could come up and give your name and what you'd like to say. Thank you. Dee Dee, and then
Thanks. Just three things that came up tonight. First of all, transient occupancy tax. When I was on council when we put those regulations in. I just want to make sure that you all realize that you can only do that rent short term if it's your primary residence, and that's a way that this Airbnb disclosure actually could help you a lot. It doesn't, zoning or otherwise. We're a small city. You can figure out real quickly whether people are doing this, because it was getting to be a really big problem. People were buying houses solely to Airbnb them. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Secondly, I just wanted to say that in terms of the payment in lieu of taxes, is the closest I've ever heard anybody acknowledge that this is a optional tax on gas. And you know, in page 56 of your budget has it under taxes total. It has the payment in lieu of taxes, and it's $7,881,000. Mr. Cullen was right. I was wrong. It wasn't $6. It's $7, almost $8 million. Most of that, the majority, simple majority, is coming from the city. And just remember that when people can't pay their gas bills, they also can't pay their water bills. It's one bill. And if your utilities are cut off, you will lose your kids, for one thing. You cannot, the social services cannot leave your children in a house that doesn't have utilities. When I was on council, we kept track of how many households were cut off every year. It was around 10% every year of people losing their utilities. Sometimes they would be able to turn them back on, but it's very expensive to be dropping your utilities and turning them back on. That's another fee you have to, so it just hurts people of low income disproportionately. And just the last thing I'd like to say is, if you believe that the public does not need to know that in front of their houses, and there's 75 to 100 homes impacted, are going to have a 36-inch, 10-foot deep trench dug in their streets over 4 miles of the city, then God bless you. But I believe that the public needs to know. They have not been told this. I asked Ravenna this question, and they said, we'll tell them after you vote on it, after it's approved. I believe the public needs to know what is going to happen, and it's a possibility their utilities will need to be disconnected for a time, because this is all below the existing gas, water, and sewer utilities that have laterals on both sides of the streets from the main. There's, and it's in some of the oldest parts of the city, so those could be terracotta laterals. So, I mean, there's so many liabilities. The public really needs to know what's going to happen. Thank you.
Yep, if you can give your name, please.
And it's Lucy, the thing I wanted to ask earlier that what you mentioned about the flock system being used in resolving several cases. I just know that I just heard I know of several people who were very concerned about the system existing or being used by the federal government, and I just want to know what the scale of that is, like how many cases are actually being resolved, just to see like if somebody doesn't feel safe with having this being used and as a surveillance system, then what is the actual trade-off there? Like what benefit is there versus that risk that comes from it? And sorry, I'm kind of rambling here, but is there a clear, I guess, accounting of what it has been used for and what it is benefiting the community for?
Thank you.
And let me just add, I would hope that that information would be a part of whatever we're going to be getting when we look
That is the
at
purpose
things
of
in
the
a few
vote.
more months as we review it all.
So, with no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
Okay. Any oppositions? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you.